I was at a cafe with my new wife and stepdaughter. While they went to use the restroom, a man placed a blue box on my table and said, "You'll need this tonight." Before I could ask him anything, he disappeared. I hid the box in my bag and went home. When I finally opened it, the cafe smelled like burnt sugar and old wood that afternoon. The kind of place where everything costs too much and tastes just good enough to justify it. I remember because I'd been calculating in my head whether we could afford to come here every Sunday, the way Sarah wanted. She had this dream of making it our place, a tradition for our new little family. 3 months married, and I was still learning how to be a husband again, still figuring out how to be a father to Emma, her 7-year-old daughter, who called me David instead of Dad, and probably always would. Sarah had gone to the restroom first, her hand brushing my shoulder as she stood, that casual intimacy of new marriage that still made my chest tight with gratitude. Emma followed a moment later, her patent leather shoes clicking against the hardwood floor, clutching the stuffed rabbit she still carried everywhere despite insisting she was too old for baby toys. I watched them disappear around the corner, Sarah's hand finding Emma's, and I felt that familiar swell of almost too much happiness. The kind that makes you nervous, the kind that makes you wait for the other shoe to drop. I should have known better than to trust that feeling. I was scrolling through my phone, pretending to check work emails, but really just looking at the photos from our honeymoon in Sedona when the shadow fell across the table. I glanced up, expecting our waiter with the check, and found instead a man I'd never seen before. Late 50s, maybe 60, silver hair, cut military short, eyes like lake water in winter, that pale blue that looks almost gray in certain light. He wore an expensive watch and an inexpensive suit, the kind of contradiction that made you look twice. He didn't say hello, didn't apologize for interrupting, just placed a blue box on the table between my coffee cup and Sarah's half-eaten scone. It was the size of a shoebox, but flatter, wrapped in paper the color of a robin's egg, tied with white ribbon that looked hand-done, the kind with actual effort behind it. "You'll need this tonight," he said. His voice was quiet but carried weight like river stones dropping into still water. I stared at the box, then at him. "I think you have the wrong person." "I don't." He was already turning away, already moving toward the door with the purposeful stride of someone who delivered exactly what he came to deliver and had no interest in conversation. "Wait!" I started to stand, but he was gone. Just gone out the door and around the corner before I could even push my chair back. I looked around the cafe. Was anyone else seeing this? The couple by the window was lost in their own world, sharing a piece of cake with 2 forks. The man with the laptop near the door hadn't looked up once. The barista was wiping down the espresso machine with the focused intensity of someone deeply, profoundly bored. No one had noticed. No one cared. Just me and this blue box that suddenly felt heavy with implication. I pulled it closer. The paper was thick, expensive. The ribbon was silk. There was no card, no tag, no indication of what was inside or who had sent it. I ran my finger along the edge, felt the sharp corners of whatever lay beneath the wrapping, and something in my stomach twisted. Not quite fear, not quite anticipation. Something older and more primal, like the feeling you get when you hear footsteps behind you in a parking garage at night. I heard Sarah's laugh before I saw her. That bright, cascading sound that had first made me fall in love with her across a crowded hospital fundraiser 2 years ago. She'd been wearing green. I'd been trying not to stare. She'd caught me anyway. "Emma, slow down," Sarah called. And then they were back. Emma running ahead to reclaim her seat, her rabbit dangling from one hand. "Did you order dessert?" Emma asked, eyeing the box with the calculating interest of a child who understands that mysterious packages sometimes contain cookies. "No, sweetheart," I smiled, sliding the box off the table and into my laptop bag in one smooth motion. "Just some work stuff someone dropped off." Sarah raised an eyebrow as she sat down. "On a Sunday at a cafe, your boss is getting creative." "Tell me about it." The lie came easily, naturally, and I hated how easily it came. 3 months married and already I was keeping secrets. But what was I supposed to say? A stranger just gave me a mysterious box and told me I'd need it tonight. That sounded insane. That sounded like the opening to a very bad thriller or a very elaborate scam. We finished our coffee. We paid the check, more than we should have spent. But Sarah was happy, and Emma had hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. And wasn't that worth it? We walked to the car holding hands, Sarah in the middle, Emma on her right, me on her left. This little chain of humans trying to be a family. The afternoon sun was doing that thing it does in autumn, slanting gold and amber through the trees, making everything look like a painting of itself.
"Can we come back next week?" Emma asked as I buckled her into her car seat. "We'll see, baby," Sarah said, which we both knew meant yes. Sarah had trouble saying no to her daughter. I had trouble saying no to both of them. The drive home was full of comfortable silence and Emma's off-key humming from the back seat. Sarah dozed against the window, her hand resting on my thigh. Another casual intimacy that still felt new, still felt earned. I drove carefully, consciously, the way I did everything now. Second marriage, second chance. I wasn't going to screw this up the way I'd screwed up the first one. The blue box sat in my bag in the trunk and I tried not to think about it. Tried and failed. We got home just as the sun was starting to set, painting our little craftsman bungalow in shades of orange and pink. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with appliances from the 90s that I kept meaning to update, but it was ours. Paid for, safe. Emma ran inside to play with her toys. Sarah started pulling things out of the refrigerator to make dinner. Chicken stir-fry, something simple, something we could eat together at the table like normal families do. "I'm going to change," I said, kissing her cheek. "Be right back." I took my bag to the bedroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed that Sarah and I shared, and stared at the blue box like it might detonate. "You'll need this tonight." Why tonight? What was special about tonight? It was Sunday, October 15th. No anniversary, no birthday, no occasion, just a regular evening. Just us. I pulled the box out slowly, set it on my lap. The weight was wrong. Too light for books, too heavy for clothing. I pinched the ribbon, pulled. It came undone easily, like it had been waiting for this. The paper fell away in sheets, and underneath was a plain white box, the kind you get at office supply stores. No labels, no markings. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in white tissue paper, was a tablet. Not a new one. It was older, maybe 5 or 6 years out of date, the kind that had probably been top of the line once, but was now just functional. It was charged. The screen was dark, but alive. That particular darkness that meant power, meant waiting. Underneath the tablet was an envelope, cream-colored, expensive. My name written across the front in fountain pen, the letters precise and elegant. David, just my first name. No last name necessary because whoever sent this knew exactly who I was. My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of cardstock, the message typed in that same elegant script. "David, what you're about to discover will hurt, that you deserve the truth. Your wife doesn't know you found this, not yet, but she will, because tonight at exactly 8 p.m., she's going to tell you anyway, or rather, she's going to try. The tablet contains everything you need to know, everything she's hidden, everything she's planned. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. But better you see it now than wake up 6 months from now with nothing. Watch the videos, read the messages, check the dates, and then decide what kind of man you want to be. Someone who needed you to know. I read it 3 times. 4. 5. The words didn't change. They sat there on the expensive cardstock, patient and poisonous, waiting for me to understand. "David," Sarah's voice from the kitchen, bright and unsuspecting. "Dinner's almost ready."
"Coming," I called back, my voice somehow steady, somehow normal. I looked at the tablet, looked at the note, looked at the door separating me from my wife of 3 months, my wife who smiled at me over morning coffee, my wife who fit perfectly in the curve of my arm at night, my wife who was apparently hiding something, apparently planning something. Everything she's hidden, everything she's planned. I pressed the power button on the tablet. It came to life immediately. No password, no security, just a home screen with 3 folders. Videos, messages, financial, and a 4th icon I hadn't noticed at first. A countdown timer in the corner of the screen. 24,733 and ticking down. 2 hours and 47 minutes until 8 p.m., until Sarah told me. What was she going to tell me? What was she planning? I sat there on the edge of our bed in our bedroom with the curtains Sarah had picked out and the photo of us from our wedding on the nightstand, and I felt the floor of my new life begin to crack. "David, come set the table." Sarah again, cheerful, domestic, normal. I closed the box, shoved it under the bed, stood up, looked at myself in the mirror. 42 years old, starting to gray at the temples, the small scar above my left eyebrow from a bike accident when I was 10. I looked the same. I looked like a man who was about to have dinner with his family. I looked like a man who was fine. I looked like a liar. I walked into the kitchen, wrapped my arms around Sarah from behind while she stirred the vegetables in the wok, kissed her neck the way she liked. "Smells amazing," I said. She turned in my arms, smiled up at me. "You okay? You seem quiet." "Just tired," I said. "Long week." "Well, we have all evening to relax. Just us. Just family. Just us. Just family." I smiled, kissed her forehead, set the table while Emma chattered about her stuffed rabbit, and Sarah hummed along to the music playing from her phone. We sat down together. We held hands, and Emma said a little prayer she'd learned at school. We ate dinner like normal people, like people who loved each other, like people who weren't standing on the edge of something terrible. And the whole time, underneath our bed, that tablet waited. The timer counted down, and I knew with the certainty of someone who'd already lost one marriage, already knew the signs, already understood how betrayal felt, that nothing was going to be the same after 8 p.m. "You'll need this tonight." The stranger hadn't been wrong. I just didn't know yet what kind of needing he meant. The kind that saves you, or the kind that destroys you. Either way, in 2 hours and 33 minutes, I was going to find out. Dinner lasted forever. Or maybe it lasted exactly 37 minutes, the way it always did, and time had just become elastic, stretching and contracting around the weight of what I knew was waiting for me. Emma ate her chicken and broccoli with the focused determination of a child who'd been promised ice cream for dessert. Sarah told a story about a difficult patient at the hospital. She was a nurse practitioner specialized in pediatrics, the kind of person who made sick children smile even when they felt terrible. I'd always loved that about her, the way she could bring light into dark places. I wondered if she'd been bringing light into my life or just blinding me to what was already there. "You're really quiet tonight," Sarah said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Her fingers were warm, familiar. 3 months of marriage, but we'd been together for 2 years before that. I knew the geography of her hands, the small scar on her thumb from a kitchen accident, the way her wedding ring caught the light. "Just thinking about work," I said, another lie. They were coming easier now, sliding out like they'd been practiced. "Big presentation on Tuesday." "You'll be great," she said, squeezing my hand. "You're always great." Emma asked to be excused. Sarah nodded, and our daughter, her daughter, I reminded myself, though I'd started thinking of her as ours, ran off to play. We could hear her in the living room talking to her stuffed animals in that serious voice children use when they're being parents to their toys. She's getting so comfortable with you, Sarah said, starting to clear the plates. It's nice she was so worried about me remarrying, about having to share me, but you've been so patient with her. She's a great kid, I said, and meant it. Emma, with her gap-toe smile and her endless questions and her habit of leaving her shoes in the middle of the hallway where I'd trip over them every single morning. I'd grown to love her, not because she was Sarah's daughter, but because she was herself, funny and smart and kind in that unself-conscious way children can be before the world teaches them to be careful. What would this do to her? Whatever was on that tablet, whatever Sarah was planning, would it shatter Emma's world too? I helped clean up, loading the dishwasher with methodical precision. Anything to keep my hands busy, to keep my mind from spiraling. Sarah moved around the kitchen with easy grace, putting away leftovers, wiping down counters. We developed a rhythm, the two of us. She washed, I dried. She cooked, I cleaned. She managed Emma's schedule, I handled the house repairs. We fit together like puzzle pieces. Or so I'd thought. I'm going to give Emma her bath, Sarah said, drying her hands on a towel. Want to read her a bedtime story after? Of course, I said. She kissed me quick and sweet, tasting like the wine we'd had with dinner. Love you. Love you too, I said, and wondered if it was the last time I'd say it and mean it the same way. She disappeared down the hallway and I heard the bath running. Heard Emma's delighted shriek as Sarah probably splashed her. Heard the sounds of my family being happy and normal and completely unaware that everything was about to change. I looked at the clock on the microwave. 7:04 p.m. 56 minutes until 8 o'clock. 56 minutes until Sarah was going to tell me what was she going to say? Would she come to me with tears in her eyes, confession on her lips? Would she sit me down at the same kitchen table where we'd just eaten dinner and destroy everything with carefully chosen words? I couldn't wait. I couldn't sit here for 56 more minutes pretending everything was fine while that tablet sat under our bed like a bomb waiting to detonate. I grabbed my phone, headed toward the bedroom. I'm going to take a work call, I said loudly enough for Sarah to hear over the running water. Might be a few minutes. Okay, she called back. Try not to let them stress you out on a Sunday. Too late for that. I closed the bedroom door, locked it, something I never did. But Sarah was busy with Emma and wouldn't notice. I pulled the box out from under the bed, extracted the tablet, and sat against the headboard with my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The countdown timer read 05417. I opened the first folder. Videos. There were 12 files, each labeled with a date. The oldest was from 3 years ago, before I'd even met Sarah. The most recent was from 2 days ago, Friday, the day before yesterday, when Sarah had told me she was working a late shift at the hospital and I'd eaten leftover pizza alone and gone to bed early. My finger hovered over the first video. Did I want to know? Could I unknow it once I knew? Better you see it now than wake up 6 months from now with nothing. I pressed play. The video opened on a restaurant I didn't recognize. Upscale, dim lighting, the kind of place with cloth napkins and prefix menus. The camera angle was from across the room, slightly elevated. Maybe someone had propped a phone against something, or maybe it was security footage someone had accessed. The quality was good enough to see clearly. Sarah sat at a table for two, wearing the blue dress she'd worn to her friend Monica's birthday party. I remembered that party. I hadn't been able to go. I'd had the flu, had stayed home feeling miserable while Sarah went solo. She'd come home around 11, kissed my fevered forehead, told me all about the terrible DJ and the overpriced drinks. She'd neglected to mention the man. He sat across from her in the video. Late 30s, handsome in that effortless way some men are. Dark hair, good suit, expensive watch. They were leaning close, talking, laughing. Sarah touched his hand across the table. He caught her fingers, held them, brought them to his lips. I felt sick. The video had no audio, just silent footage of my wife, my girlfriend then. We'd been dating about 6 months, being intimate with someone else. The timestamp in the corner read the date. The time, 9:47 p.m. While I'd been home with a fever, alternating between chills and sweating through the sheets, Sarah had been here with him. The video was only 2 minutes long. It ended with them standing with him, helping her into her coat with his hand on her lower back as they walked toward the exit. I sat there staring at the frozen final frame, at Sarah's smile, at the easy way she leaned into him, and I tried to remember if she'd seemed different when she came home that night. Had there been guilt in her eyes? Lipstick smudged? The scent of cologne that wasn't mine? I couldn't remember. I'd been half dead with flu, just grateful she was home, grateful she kissed me despite the risk of getting sick herself. She kissed me. After being with him, she came home and kissed me. I opened the second video. Same man, different location, coffee shop this time, broad daylight, Sarah in her scrubs. She must have met him on her lunch break. They sat close in a corner booth, their heads together like conspirators or lovers. The video was longer this time, nearly 5 minutes. I watched them talk, watched Sarah laugh at something he said, watched her reach across to straighten his collar in that casually intimate way you only do with someone you know well, someone you've touched before. Third video. His apartment, I guessed, from the domestic setting. Sarah curled on a couch, barefoot, comfortable. The man brought her wine. They toasted to something. The timestamp said it was taken on a Tuesday afternoon. I checked my phone calendar, scrolled back. That Tuesday, I'd been at a work conference in Phoenix. I'd called Sarah that night from my hotel room, told her I missed her. She'd said she missed me too, that she was just watching TV, about to go to bed early. She'd been at his apartment. Fourth video, fifth, sixth. Different locations, different dates, but always the same story. Sarah and this man together, secret, careful. Sometimes they were in public places, maintaining just enough distance to be plausibly platonic. Sometimes they were alone, and the intimacy was unmistakable. The seventh video was dated from a year ago, 2 months before Sarah and I got engaged. I'd proposed at the beach, sunset, the whole romantic cliché. I'd been so nervous I'd almost dropped the ring in the sand. She'd cried when she said yes, and I thought they were happy tears. Tears of joy and surprise and love. In the video, she was in bed with him. I'm not going to describe what I saw. I'm not going to put those images into words, make them more real than they already are. Just know that I watched, and I understood that the woman I'd proposed to, the woman who'd cried and said yes and kissed me like I was her whole world, was sleeping with someone else, was lying to me with her body, with her words, with her whole life. I should have stopped watching, should have thrown the tablet across the room, should have stormed out to confront her, should have done anything except keep watching. But I couldn't stop. It was like watching a car crash, like watching your own life end in slow motion. The eighth video was from 6 months ago, our engagement party, the one her parents threw at their country club. I could see myself in the background of this one, talking to Sarah's father, shaking hands, being welcomed into the family. And Sarah, in another corner of the room, stepped out onto a terrace with him just for a moment, just long enough to kiss him quickly, carefully, where no one could see, except someone had seen. Someone had filmed it. The ninth video was from 4 months ago, the 10th from 3 months ago, a week before our wedding, the 11th from 6 weeks ago, when we were supposed to be in our honeymoon phase, when everything was supposed to be perfect and new and honest. The 12th video was from Friday night. Sarah had told me she was working late. Emergencies in the pediatric unit, she had said. Kids who needed her. I'd believed her because I always believed her, because why wouldn't I? In the video, she was at his apartment again. Same couch, same comfort level, same intimacy. But this time there was audio. I turned up the volume, pressed the tablet close, and listened to my wife destroy me. "Can't keep doing this," the man was saying. His voice was smooth, educated, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who'd never struggled for anything in his life. "Sarah," we agreed. "You said 6 months. It's been 6 months. You got your marriage, you got your nice little house and your stable husband and your health insurance." "I know," Sarah said, and she sounded tired. "I know, Marcus. I just need a little more time." "Time for what? You said you'd be done with him by now. You said this was temporary." "It is temporary." Sarah's voice had an edge now, defensive. "But I can't just walk away yet. David's not stupid. If I divorce him right after marrying him, he'll dig into the financials. He'll find out." "Then what's the plan?" Marcus leaned back, arms crossed. "Because I'm tired of being your secret. I'm tired of waiting while you play house with some don't." Sarah's voice went sharp. "Don't talk about him like that. David's a good man." "Then why are you married to him while sleeping with me?" The silence that followed was long and heavy. Sarah looked down at her hands, twisted her wedding ring, my grandmother's ring, the one I'd given her with shaking hands and a full heart. "You know why," she said finally. "We've been over this. David has what I need right now. Stability, security, a home for Emma. Everything I couldn't give her on my own. Everything you won't give us. Can't give," Marcus corrected. "My wife would take everything in a divorce. You know that." "We've talked about this." His wife. Of course he had a wife. Of course Sarah wasn't even the only one cheating, wasn't even special in her betrayal. Just another affair, another secret, another lie. "So what's the timeline?" Marcus asked. "Give me something concrete, Sarah. When do you stop playing the devoted wife and we can actually be together?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost sad. "I need to get pregnant first." The world tilted. The room spun. I had to pause the video because I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I'd just heard. "I need to get pregnant first." We'd been trying for a baby. Since the honeymoon, Sarah had been tracking her cycle, taking vitamins, timing everything carefully. She'd said she wanted to have a baby with me, wanted to give Emma a sibling, wanted to expand our family. I'd been so happy, so honored that she wanted that with me. It had all been a lie. It had all been part of a plan. I pressed play again, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the tablet. "Once you're pregnant, then what?" Marcus asked. "Then I have leverage," Sarah said simply. "I stay married through the pregnancy, maybe a year after, long enough that David bonds with the baby, long enough that he'd pay anything to maintain custody rights to be part of his child's life. Then I file for divorce, cite irreconcilable differences, take half of everything plus child support for 2 kids, Emma and the baby." "Cold," Marcus said, but he was smiling. "I forgot how calculating you can be." "I learned from the best," Sarah said, and kissed him. The video ended. I sat there in my bedroom, our bedroom, though it had never really been ours, had it? And I finally understood. I finally saw the whole picture. Sarah had never loved me. She'd married me for security, for health insurance, for a home for her daughter, and a future for a child I hadn't even helped create yet. I was a means to an end, a check mark on a list, a solution to a problem. She was going to use me, string me along, get pregnant, and then leave me broke and heartbroken and fighting for custody of a child I'd been tricked into creating. And Marcus, married Marcus, who couldn't leave his own wife without losing everything, was going to be there waiting when it was over. They'd planned it all. They'd calculated every step. They'd turned my life into a scheme. I looked at the clock. 7:47 p.m. 13 minutes until 8 o'clock. 13 minutes until Sarah was going to tell me what was she going to confess.
Was she going to come clean and beg forgiveness? Or was this something else? Some other play in her carefully orchestrated game? I opened the second folder on the tablet. Messages. There were hundreds, maybe thousands text messages between Sarah and Marcus going back 3 years. I scrolled through them, watching their affair unfold in emoji and autocorrect in stolen moments and coded language.
Miss you and thinking about you and can't wait to be with you again. David suspects nothing, and he's so trusting it's almost sad. And sometimes I feel guilty, but then I remember why we're doing this. What if I actually get pregnant? Sarah had written once. Then you do, Marcus had replied. We always knew that was part of the plan. Doesn't change anything between us. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who has to sleep with him. Think of it as work. Close your eyes and think of the payout. I was going to be sick. Actually, physically sick. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up everything I'd eaten for dinner. My body trying to purge the poison of what I knew, the infection of this betrayal. When I finished, I rinsed my mouth, splashed water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror. I looked pale, shaky, like a man who'd just watched his entire life collapse. From down the hall, I heard Sarah's voice. Emma's in bed. I'm going to come find you. Okay. I checked my phone. 7:54 p.m. 6 minutes. Whatever Sarah was going to tell me, she was coming now. I grabbed the tablet, shoved it back in the box, kicked the box onto the bed, unlocked the bedroom door, sat on the edge of the mattress, and tried to compose my face into something approaching normal. Sarah appeared in the doorway, and I saw her. Really saw her for the first time. The woman I'd married. The woman I'd trusted. The woman who'd been playing me for a fool for 2 years. She looked nervous. Hey, she said softly. Can we talk? Of course, I said, and my voice sounded almost normal. Almost. What's wrong? She came in, closed the door behind her, sat beside me on the bed, took my hand. Hers was trembling. David, she said, there's something I need to tell you. Sarah's hand trembled in mine, and for a brief, stupid moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost wanted to squeeze her fingers and tell her, whatever it was, we'd get through it together. That's what marriage was, wasn't it? Partnership, forgiveness, working through the hard things. Then I remembered the videos, remembered Marcus. Remembered I need to get pregnant first. And sometimes I feel guilty, but then I remember why we're doing this. And my sympathy died before it could fully form. What is it? I asked. And I was proud of how steady my voice sounded, how concerned, how perfectly, completely unsuspecting. She looked down at our joined hands, and I could see her gathering herself, preparing for whatever performance she was about to give. In the soft light of our bedroom, the bedroom with the paint color she'd chosen, the curtains she'd hung, the life she'd built on lies. She looked fragile, young, scared. She was 29, I was 42, 13 years between us, though it had never felt like much of a gap before. She was mature for her age, I'd told myself, an old soul, a young single mother who'd had to grow up fast. Now I wondered if the age difference had been part of the calculation too. Older man, more established, more stable, more naive, more willing to believe a beautiful young woman could actually love him. I don't know how to say this, Sarah started, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked up at me, and there were tears in her eyes. Real tears, or at least tears she'd summoned on command. I've been trying to find the right words all day, but there's no easy way. I waited. The clock on the nightstand ticked over to 7:58 p.m. I'm pregnant, she said. The word should have hit me like a train. Should have exploded in my chest with joy or fear or shock or something. Instead, I felt nothing. Just a cold, distant observation. Ah, so that's what she's telling me. That's the play.
But I couldn't let her see that I knew. Couldn't tip my hand, not yet. Not until I understood the whole game. So I let my face do what it would have done 3 hours ago before the blue box, before the stranger, before everything changed. I let myself look surprised, confused, happy, all the things a man should feel when his wife tells him they're having a baby. I stopped, started again. We're having a baby. She nodded, and now the tears were falling, tracking down her cheeks in perfectly timed streams. I took 3 tests this morning after you left for the gym. They were all positive. I'm about 6 weeks along. I think I wanted to wait until I was sure before I told you, but I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I couldn't look at you across the dinner table and not tell you that you're going to be a father. You're going to be a father. Except I probably wasn't. Was I? How carefully had she been timing things? Had she slept with Marcus during her fertile window, then come home to me? Or had she been meticulous about it, made sure I was the biological father, even if Marcus was her endgame? Did it even matter? David, Sarah's voice pulled me back. Say something, please. I know this is fast. We've only been married 3 months, but I thought you'd be happy. You said you wanted children. I did want children. I'd wanted them with my first wife too, but Julie had wanted to wait, wanted to build her career first. And then by the time she was ready, I discovered she'd been having an affair with her boss, and our marriage had imploded. No kids, just lawyers and divided assets. And the particular kind of failure that comes from realizing you never really knew someone at all. History repeating itself. How poetic. I'm happy, I said, and I pulled Sarah into my arms, held her while she cried against my chest. I'm so happy, sweetheart. This is amazing news. She pulled back to look at me, searching my face. Really? You're not upset that it happened so fast? Are you kidding? This is everything I wanted. A family with you, Emma, and now this baby? It's perfect. I watched something shift in her expression. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. The look of someone whose plan was working exactly as intended. I was so nervous, she said, laughing through her tears. I was worried you'd think it was too soon, that we should have waited. No, I said firmly. No, this is perfect timing. I love you. I love Emma, and I'm going to love this baby, our baby. She kissed me then, salt sweet from tears, and I kissed her back even though my skin was crawling. Even though I wanted to push her away and demand the truth, demand she tell me about Marcus and the plan and the lie of everything we'd built together. But I didn't because I needed to think, needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I made any moves. The stranger had given me the blue box for a reason, had told me I'd need it tonight for a reason. There was more to this than just Sarah's confession. There had to be. When should we tell Emma? Sarah asked, settling back against the pillows, one hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. The gesture looked practiced, maternal, like something she had rehearsed in a mirror. Soon, I said, but maybe we wait a few weeks until you've seen a doctor, made sure everything is okay. That's probably smart. Sarah agreed. I'll make an appointment tomorrow. Oh God, David, we're going to have a baby. We're going to be parents together. Together. What a word, what a concept. Together implied partnership, equality, honesty. We were none of those things. We were a con and a mark, a hunter and prey, a woman with a plan and a man too stupid to see it coming. Except I had seen it coming. Someone had made sure I saw it coming. The man at the cafe with his silver hair and Winter Lake eyes. The man who'd known exactly when Sarah would tell me, who'd given me just enough time to prepare, to understand, to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. I should let you rest, I said, standing.
You've had a big day, emotional. You need to take care of yourself now. Take care of our baby."
The lie tasted like ashes in my mouth, but Sarah smiled at me like I'd said something wonderful. "You're going to be such a good father," she said. "Emma's so lucky to have you. This baby is so lucky." I kissed her forehead. Judas at the garden. I thought, the betrayer's kiss. And left her there in our bedroom, looking so invulnerable and victorious. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a bourbon, even though I rarely drank, and stood at the window, looking out at our quiet suburban street. Porch lights glowing, cars in driveways, families in houses living their normal lives, unaware that just next door, a man's entire world had collapsed between dinner and bedtime. The clock on the microwave read 8:14 p.m. I'd made it through Sarah's confession without breaking, without revealing that I knew, but I still didn't understand the full picture. The videos and messages showed me the affair, showed me the plan, showed me Sarah's calculating betrayal. But there was still a third folder on that tablet, financial, and I hadn't looked at it yet. I finished my bourbon, rinsed the glass, and walked back to the bedroom as quietly as I could. Sarah was in the bathroom getting ready for bed. I could hear water running, her electric toothbrush humming. I pulled the blue box from under the bed, extracted the tablet, and opened the third folder. What I found there made the affair look like a minor betrayal, made the pregnancy plan seem almost quaint by comparison. The folder contained bank statements, financial records, legal documents, all meticulously organized, all with my name on them, and all showing a pattern of systematic theft that had been happening since the day we got married. Joint account withdrawals. Small amounts at first, 200 here, 500 there. Nothing large enough to raise a flag, nothing that would make me check the statements too closely. I'd added Sarah to all my accounts when we married, had given her full access because that's what you do when you trust someone, when you're building a life together. She'd been draining them. Slowly, carefully transferring money to an account I didn't know she had. Over the past 3 months, she'd moved nearly $40,000 out of our joint savings. Money I'd been putting away for years. Money from my divorce settlement with Julie. Money that was supposed to be for our future, for emergencies, for the life we were building. It was gone. Or rather, it was in Sarah's private account, waiting for when she'd need it. For when she left me. But that wasn't even the worst part. There were other documents in the folder. Credit card applications in my name, but with addresses I didn't recognize. Cards I'd never opened, never used, but that somehow had balances. Thousands of dollars in balances, all being charged to my credit, all destroying my score month by month. She was setting me up not just to leave me heartbroken and fighting for custody, but to leave me financially ruined. By the time she was done, by the time she'd had the baby and filed for divorce, I'd be buried in debt I didn't even know I had. I'd be fighting her in court while also fighting creditors, while trying to explain to lawyers and judges how my wife had systematically destroyed my financial life and the pregnancy. If the baby was mine, I'd owe child support. 2 kids worth of payments. My salary was good, but not good enough to handle 2 children's support, plus the debt Sarah was creating, plus trying to rebuild my own life. She'd calculated it all. Every step, every dollar, every contingency. I sat on the bathroom floor with the tablet in my lap, feeling the full weight of what had been done to me. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just lying about love. This was premeditated destruction. This was a woman who'd looked at me and seen nothing but a resource to exploit, a problem to solve, a wallet with legs. How long had she been planning it? The documents showed the money transfers started on our wedding night. Our wedding night. While I'd been carrying her over the threshold of our house, while I'd been making love to my new wife and feeling grateful and blessed and lucky, she'd already been executing her plan. Had probably logged into our accounts from her phone while I slept, had started the process of taking everything I had.
The bathroom door opened and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I'd been so absorbed in the documents that I hadn't heard the water stop, hadn't heard Sarah finish her nighttime routine. She stood there in pajamas I'd bought her for her birthday, looking at me, sitting on the floor with the tablet, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw fear flash across her face. "What are you doing?" she asked carefully. I looked down at the tablet, still open to our bank statements, to the evidence of her theft. Then I closed the cover, set it aside, and stood up. "Work stuff," I said. "Got an email I needed to check. Sorry, I know I said no work tonight, but it was important." The fear in her expression melted into relief. "You scared me," I thought. She stopped, laughed a little. "Never mind. I don't know what I thought. Come to bed. I'm exhausted." "You go ahead," I said. "I need to finish this email and then I'll be there." She kissed my cheek, casual, familiar. The kiss of a wife who thought her husband suspected nothing and went to bed. Within minutes, I heard her breathing even out into sleep, or pretend sleep. I couldn't tell anymore what was real and what was performance. I took the tablet back to the kitchen, poured another bourbon, and read through every document in the financial folder, every transfer, every fraudulent credit card charge, every piece of evidence of Sarah's systematic destruction of my life. By the time I finished, it was after 11 p.m., and I understood three things with perfect clarity. First, Sarah had been planning this for at least 3 years, probably longer. The affair with Marcus had started before we even met, which meant our entire relationship had been built on a foundation of lies. She'd targeted me deliberately, had seen a divorced man with a good job and no kids and money in the bank, and had made me fall in love with her. Second, if I did nothing, if I just accepted the pregnancy and played the role of happy father and eventually got served with divorce papers, I would be destroyed, financially, emotionally, completely. Sarah and Marcus had built a careful trap, and I'd walked into it with my eyes closed and my heart open. Third, the stranger who'd given me the blue box hadn't just been warning me. He'd been giving me a weapon. Evidence. Proof. Everything I'd need to protect myself, to fight back, to make sure that when this marriage ended, and it was going to end, there was no saving it now. I wouldn't be the one left with nothing. But who was he? How did he know? How did he get these videos, these messages, these financial records? I turned the tablet over in my hands, looking for some clue, some indication of who'd sent it. There was nothing. Just the 3 folders and the countdown timer, which had stopped at 00 when Sarah had made her confession at 8:02 p.m. Then I noticed something I'd missed before. A 4th folder, hidden unless you scrolled to the second screen. It was labeled simply, "Read Me." I opened it. Inside was a single document, a letter written in the same elegant script as the note that had come with the box. "David, by now you've seen everything. You know what Sarah is. You know what she's planned. You're probably wondering who I am and why I'm helping you. I'm someone who loved someone like Sarah once. Someone who trusted the wrong person and paid for it. I lost everything. My money, my home, my children. I spent years in court fighting for custody of kids who'd been turned against me, trying to prove that I'd been conned, that my marriage had been a fraud. I lost anyway. The courts believed her story. The judges saw a struggling mother and a bitter ex-husband, and they made their decision accordingly. I don't want that to happen to you. I've been watching Sarah for a while now, investigating her, you might say. It's what I do. I find people like her, people who make a living destroying others, and I stop them. Sometimes with evidence, sometimes with exposure, sometimes just with a warning to their next victim. You're not her first, David. There were 2 before you. 2 other men who thought they'd found love and found ruin instead. One of them is still paying child support for a child that isn't his. The other lost his house, his retirement, everything. Both of them are shell-shocked, broken men who never saw it coming. You have a choice now. You can confront her with this evidence, let her know you're aware of her plan, and negotiate your way out. Or you can do what I think you should do. You can be smarter than she is. You can plan. You can prepare. You can build your own case, protect your assets, and make sure that when this ends, you're not the one left with nothing. The evidence on this tablet is legally obtained and admissible in court. I've made sure of that. But how you use it is up to you. One more thing. The pregnancy? I'd suggest a paternity test, but don't let Sarah know you're suspicious. There are ways to get DNA without her consent. A strand of hair, a used glass, skin cells from a pillowcase. I've included contact information for a discreet lab in the documents folder. Be smart, David. Be careful. And be the kind of man who doesn't let someone destroy him without fighting back. Someone who's been where you are. I read the letter 3 times, and with each reading something shifted inside me. The shock and hurt and betrayal began to crystallize into something harder, something colder. Sarah thought she was the smart one, the one with the plan, the one who'd calculated every angle and accounted for every contingency. But she hadn't accounted for this, for someone warning me, for me knowing before it was too late. She'd played me for a fool, but the game wasn't over yet. I looked toward the bedroom where my wife slept, her hand on her stomach, dreaming of the baby she'd use as leverage and the life she'd build once she'd taken everything from me. And I started planning. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face. The tears, the smile, the hand on her stomach. The perfect performance of a woman telling her husband they were having a baby. Except now I knew it was just that, a performance. Every word rehearsed, every gesture calculated, every emotion manufactured for maximum effect. Around 3 a.m., I gave up trying and moved to the living room with the tablet and a notepad. Sarah was deeply asleep. I'd checked on her twice, watched her chest rise and fall in the rhythm of genuine rest. She had no idea I was awake. No idea her carefully constructed lie was already unraveling. I started making lists. That's what I do when things feel overwhelming. When the world tilts and I need to find solid ground again, I make lists. I organize. I plan. What I know. Sarah has been having an affair with Marcus for at least 3 years. The affair predates our relationship. Sarah married me for financial security and stability for Emma. She's been systematically draining our account since the wedding. She's opened fraudulent credit cards in my name. She plans to get pregnant, stay married long enough to establish custody, then divorce, and take me for everything. She's done this before, at least twice. Someone is helping me, someone who's been where I am. What I need to know, is the pregnancy real or a ploy? If real, is the baby mine or Marcus's? How much money has she actually taken? What other financial damage has she done? Who is the stranger who gave me the blue box? How do I protect myself legally? How do I protect Emma? That last one made me pause. Emma, 7 years old, with her Gapto smile and her stuffed rabbit and her habit of asking me to read her 3 stories instead of 1 at bedtime. Emma, who'd started to trust me, to let me be a parent to her. Was she part of the plan too? Had Sarah coached her to warm up to me, to make me love her so I'd be more invested, more willing to stay, more willing to pay child support when the inevitable divorce came? Or was Emma just a kid caught in the middle of her mother's schemes, as much a victim as I was? I added another item to my list. What I need to protect. My assets, my credit, my reputation to Emma if possible. My sanity. I spent the next hour going through the financial documents again, this time with a spreadsheet open on my laptop, tracking every withdrawal, every transfer, every fraudulent charge. The pattern was meticulous. Sarah had been careful never to take enough to trigger alerts, Never enough to make me check the statements too closely. 200 here, 500 there, 1,000 once or twice when I'd been out of town and wouldn't notice. Over 3 months, she'd moved $40,750 from our joint accounts to her private account. Money I'd saved for years. Money I'd thought was building our future together. The credit cards were worse. 4 different cards in my name, all with my social security number, but addresses I didn't recognize. 1 was a P.O. box in the next county. 2 were residential addresses that, when I looked them up, turned out to be mail forwarding services. The 4th was Marcus's apartment. I recognized the address from one of the videos. She'd been having debt sent to her lover's house. The audacity of it was almost impressive. Total debt across the 4 cards, $67,000, are all in my name, all destroying my credit score month by month while I remained blissfully unaware. I pulled my credit report, something I hadn't done in over a year because why would I? I had good credit, always paid my bills on time, was financially responsible. Or so I'd thought. My score had dropped 140 points in 3 months, from 780 to 640, from excellent to barely good, from the kind of credit that gets you favorable loan terms to the kind that makes lenders nervous. And I'd had no idea. No idea at all. I sat there in the pre-dawn darkness of my living room in the house I'd bought with money from my divorce settlement, surrounded by furniture Sarah had picked out and pictures of our happy family. And I felt something shift inside me. The shock was wearing off. The hurt was hardening into something else. Anger. Cold, clear, focused anger. Sarah thought she was clever. Thought she'd found an easy mark in a divorced man desperate for a second chance at happiness. Thought she could play me for a fool, take everything I had and walk away clean with her lover and her children and my money. She was wrong. At 5:47 a.m., I opened the README folder again and found the contact information the stranger had mentioned. A name. Doctor. Patricia Chen. A phone number. A note. Discreet DNA testing. She'll know you're calling on my referral. Trust her. I saved the number in my phone under a fake name, Robert, after my college roommate, and made a mental note to call first thing Monday morning. Then I started going through the videos again, this time taking notes, dates, locations, times, building a timeline of Sarah's affair, understanding the scope of her deception. The earliest video was from May, 3 years ago. Sarah and Marcus at an art gallery opening, champagne in hand, his arm around her waist. This was a full year before I'd even met Sarah at that hospital fundraiser. A year before, she'd smiled at me across a crowded room and made me think I was the luckiest man alive. Had she already been planning it then? Had she and Marcus already decided they needed a mark? Someone with money and stability? Someone naive enough to fall for a beautiful young single mother? Or had that come later? Had the plan evolved as their relationship couldn't, as Marcus refused to leave his wealthy wife and Sarah realized she needed another source of income, another path to the life she wanted? I'd probably never know, and maybe it didn't matter. The result was the same either way. I'd been used. The videos showed their relationship progressing through the seasons. Summer dates at outdoor cafes, fall walks through parks, winter dinners at expensive restaurants, and woven through it all, Sarah's relationship with me developing in parallel. First dates while she was sleeping with Marcus. Our first "I love you" exchanged a week after a video showed her in Marcus's bed. Our engagement while she was planning her future with someone else. The most damning video was from 2 months ago, just 6 weeks into our marriage. Sarah and Marcus in what looked like a lawyer's office, sitting across a desk from a man in an expensive suit. No audio, but I could see documents being passed across the desk. See Sarah signing papers. See Marcus's hand on her shoulder. What were they signing? Prenuptial agreements for their own eventual marriage? Financial planning documents? Something else entirely. I made a note to find out. The stranger's documentation was thorough, but there were still gaps, still questions that needed answers. At 6:30 a.m., I heard movement from the bedroom. Sarah was waking up. I quickly closed the tablet, hid it behind a couch cushion, and arranged myself to look like I'd fallen asleep on the sofa. Laptop still open to a work document I'd pulled up as cover, notepad face down on the coffee table. Sarah appeared in the doorway, sleepy and tousled, one hand on her stomach in that gesture I now recognized as performance. "David, did you sleep out here?" I pretended to wake up, rubbed my eyes, played the part. "Sorry, I was working late and must have dozed off." "What time is it?" 6:30. "Come back to bed for a little while." "It's Sunday. We can sleep in." Sunday, right? Yesterday we'd gone to the cafe as a family. Yesterday a stranger had given me a blue box and my whole life had changed. It felt like years ago instead of less than 24 hours. "You go ahead," I said. "I'm awake now." "Might as well get up, make some coffee." She crossed the room, bent to kiss my forehead. I forced myself not to flinch, not to pull away. She couldn't know. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. "You work too hard," she said softly. "Especially now, you need to take care of yourself. We need you healthy and happy. We need you." "We need your money," she meant. "We need you functioning and earning and unaware until the trap closes completely." "I know," I said. "I'll ease up. Promise." She smiled, satisfied, and headed back to bed. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close before pulling out the tablet again. There was one more thing in the README folder I'd missed before. A list of names and phone numbers under the heading Legal Resources. The first name was a divorce attorney, Margaret Hollis, specializing in high-conflict divorces and marital fraud. 5-star reviews. Office in downtown. A note next to her name. "She's handled cases like yours before. She'll believe you." The second was a forensic accountant, David Kim. He can trace every penny and testify in court if needed. The third was a private investigator, James Rodriguez. If you need additional surveillance or evidence gathering, the stranger had thought of everything. Had given me not just evidence, but a whole network of professionals who could help me fight back, who could help me survive what Sarah had planned. I sat there with that list, with those names and numbers, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Sarah. Not yet. Not in anger. Not in hurt. Not in any way that would let her know I'd figured out her game. Because the moment she knew I knew, she'd escalate. She'd play the victim, claim abuse or manipulation or anything else that would turn the narrative in her favor. She'd take Emma and disappear, file for emergency custody, make it impossible for me to protect myself. No, I was going to be smarter than that. I was going to do exactly what Sarah had done to me. I was going to plan. I was going to gather evidence. I was going to build an airtight case. And when I was ready, when I had everything I needed to protect myself legally and financially, then I would strike. But until then, I would be the perfect husband, the doting father-to-be, the man who suspected nothing. I would play the part better than Sarah had ever played hers. At 7 a.m., I started coffee and made breakfast. Pancakes, because Emma loved pancakes on Sunday mornings. When Sarah came out at 7:30, I had the table set. Music playing softly. Everything domestic and normal. "You made breakfast," she said, surprised and pleased. "Felt inspired," I said, flipping a pancake, celebrating the news. "We're having a baby, Sarah. That calls for pancakes." She laughed, wrapped her arms around me from behind, pressed her face against my back. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," I replied, and felt nothing. Emma stumbled out at 8, still half asleep, dragging her rabbit. I served her pancakes cut into funny shapes, poured syrup into a smiley face, made her giggle. Sarah watched us with soft eyes like she was seeing her plan come together perfectly. Happy family, bonded stepfather, everything going according to schedule. After breakfast, I volunteered to take Emma to the park. "You should rest," I told Sarah. "You're growing a human. Take a nap, relax. Emma and I will go play for a while." Sarah looked grateful and tired and completely convinced of my ignorance. "You're amazing," she said. "Thank you." At the park, I pushed Emma on the swings and helped her across the monkey bars and tried not to think about how this might be one of the last normal days we had together. Because when this all came out, when Sarah's plan collapsed and my counter-plan succeeded, Emma was going to be caught in the middle. She was going to lose the stable home her mother had married me to provide. She was going to see her mother exposed as a fraud and a thief. Unless I could find a way to protect her from that. Unless I could somehow extract myself from Sarah's trap without destroying Emma in the process. "David." Emma's voice pulled me back. She was looking at me with concern, the way kids do when they sense something's wrong, even if they can't articulate what. "Are you okay? You look sad." I smiled, forced brightness into my voice. "I'm not sad, sweetie. I'm happy. I'm here with you. It's a beautiful day, and I get to push you on the swings. What could be better?" She considered this, then nodded, satisfied. "Push me higher," she demanded. And I did, because she was 7 and innocent, and none of this was her fault. We stayed at the park for 2 hours. When we got home, Sarah was awake and making lunch. We ate together like a normal family. We watched a movie together. Emma curled between Sarah and me on the couch. We had a quiet, peaceful Sunday afternoon. And the whole time I was planning, calculating, preparing for war. Monday morning, I would call Dr. Chen about paternity testing. I would call Margaret Hollis about divorce strategy. I would call David Kim about protecting my assets. I would start building my case brick by brick, piece of evidence by piece of evidence. Sarah thought she had 3 more months of setup before her pregnancy would start to show, before she'd need to really commit to the next phase of her plan. She thought she had time. She was wrong, because I wasn't the man she thought I was. I wasn't the naive, trusting fool she'd married. That man had died yesterday at a cafe when a stranger handed him a blue box. The man sitting on this couch, holding her daughter, pretending everything was fine. That man was someone new, someone harder, someone who'd learned that the people you love most can destroy you the most completely. Someone who wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. Monday morning arrived with cruel normally. Alarm at 6 a.m., shower, coffee, Sarah making eggs while Emma complained about having to wear her uniform to school. The ordinary sounds of family life, each one now feeling like a lie I was complicit in maintaining. "You seemed distracted," Sarah said as she kissed me goodbye at the door. Her hand lingered on my chest, and I wondered if she was checking my heartbeat, looking for signs of stress or suspicion. "Everything okay?" "Big week at work," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. I did have projects due. I also had appointments with a divorce lawyer, a forensic accountant, and a DNA testing specialist. But Sarah didn't need to know that. "Might be some late nights. Don't work too hard," she said, her hand moving to her stomach again. That gesture, that constant, calculated reminder of the life supposedly growing inside her. "We need you. We need your money," I translated silently. "We need you compliant and unaware for at least 6 more months." "I'll be home for dinner," I promised, and left. The drive to work usually took 30 minutes, but I deliberately left early. I had calls to make, and I needed to make them somewhere Sarah couldn't possibly overhear. I pulled into a coffee shop 3 miles from our house, parked in the back corner of the lot, and pulled out my phone. Dr. Patricia Chen's number was first on my list. She answered on the second ring. "Dr. Chen," her voice was professional, clipped, efficient. "My name is David Morrison," I said. "I was given your number by someone who said you could help me, that you'd know I was calling on their referral." A pause. "Then I see you need discrete DNA testing." "Yes." "Paternity." "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had softened slightly, gained an edge of sympathy. "I'm sorry you're in this position, Mr. Morrison. I've worked with several of his referrals. The situation is always difficult." So the stranger was a man. I filed that information away.
"Can you help me?" I asked. "I can. The testing itself is straightforward. What's complicated is obtaining samples without the mother's knowledge or consent. Legally, I can test any biological material you provide: hair with follicles attached, skin cells, saliva. But I need to be clear. If you're planning to use these results in court, the chain of custody becomes important. A judge might not accept results from testing the mother didn't consent to." "I understand," I said. "Right now, I just need to know the truth. The legal admissibility comes later. When is the mother due?" "She just told me she's pregnant, about 6 weeks along," she said. "Then you have time. If you want court-admissible results, the best approach is non-invasive prenatal paternity testing. We can do it as early as 7 weeks gestation using the mother's blood, but she'd have to consent to the test." "She won't. Then we'll need to wait until after the birth, at which point you can request court-ordered testing as part of a custody proceeding, or..." Dr. Chen hesitated. "You can obtain samples now for your own knowledge, understanding that they may not be admissible. Hair is easiest, a few strands with roots attached from a hairbrush. Do you have access to her hairbrush?" I thought of our bathroom. Sarah's side of the counter with her makeup and her skincare routine and her hairbrush sitting in plain sight. "Yes, bring me 5 to 10 strands with visible follicles. For your sample, I'll need the same. Or a cheek swab. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" "What time?" "I have an opening at 4:30. It's a private entrance, very discreet. No one will see you come or go." I agreed, got the address, and hung up, feeling like I'd taken the first concrete step toward understanding the full scope of Sarah's deception. If the baby was Marcus's, if she'd gotten pregnant by her lover and was trying to pass it off as mine, that changed everything. It was fraud. Intentional, calculated fraud. My next call was to Margaret Hollis, the divorce attorney. Her secretary answered professionally cheerful, and I asked for an appointment. "What is this regarding?" she asked. "Divorce," I said. "High conflict, potential fraud." "Let me check Ms. Hollis's schedule." A pause, keys clicking. "She has an opening Wednesday at 2 p.m. Does that work?" Wednesday felt too far away, but I had no leverage to demand sooner. "That works. May I have your name and a brief description of the situation?" I gave her my name, then hesitated. "How did you summarize this?" "My wife married me to steal my money and is planning to have a baby, possibly not mine, to maximize child support payments before leaving me for her married lover. My wife and I have been married 3 months," I said carefully. "I've discovered she's been having an affair and systematically draining our accounts. She's also opened credit cards in my name without my knowledge. I need to protect my assets and understand my legal options." More keys clicking. "I see. And are there children involved?" "My wife has a 7-year-old daughter from a previous relationship, and she just told me she's pregnant." "Paternity uncertain?" "Yes, I understand. Ms. Hollis will want to see any documentation you have, bank statements, credit reports, evidence of the affair. Bring everything you can to the Wednesday appointment." "I will." I hung up and sat in my car watching the morning traffic flow past the coffee shop, people heading to work and school and normal Monday routines. And I felt utterly disconnected from that world. They were living regular lives. I was living in a thriller, a betrayal so calculated and cold it felt fictional. My third call was to David Kim, the forensic accountant. He answered his own phone. No secretary, no gatekeeper. Kim and Associates. "Mr. Kim, my name is David Morrison. I was referred to you by..." I paused, unsure how to describe the stranger. "By someone who said you could help trace financial fraud in a divorce case." "I can?"
What's the scope? My wife has been transferring money out of our joint account since we got married 3 months ago. Small amounts, systematic. I estimate around $40,000. She's also opened credit cards in my name, 4 that I know of, maybe more, and run up significant debt. I need to know the full extent of the damage, and I need documentation that will hold up in court. Do you have access to the accounts? Joint accounts? Yes. The credit cards are in my name, so I should be able to pull statements. Good. I'll need you to gather everything you can. Bank statements, credit card statements, credit reports from all 3 bureaus. Also, any documents related to your marriage, prenuptial agreement if you have one, marriage certificate, joint property deeds, anything that establishes the financial relationship. Can you get me those by end of week? I can get them to you by Wednesday. Even better, my rate is $350 an hour. For a case like this, expect to spend between $5,000 and $10,000, depending on how deep we need to dig. I can provide preliminary findings within a week of receiving your documents. Full forensic report within 2 weeks. Will that work with your timeline? I did the math quickly. I still had access to our joint accounts. Sarah hadn't drained them completely, probably because that would raise red flags. I had enough to pay Kim's retainer without Sarah noticing. That works. Email me everything you can gather. I'll send you a secure file transfer link. And, Mr. Morrison, change your passwords. All of them. Bank accounts, credit cards, email, everything. Use a password your wife wouldn't guess. Do it today. I will. And get a credit freeze. Contact all 3 bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and freeze your credit immediately. That will prevent her from opening any new accounts in your name. I hadn't even thought of that. Of course, Sarah could still be opening accounts, could still be doing damage I hadn't discovered yet. I'll do it right now. Good. One more thing, and I say this to everyone in your situation. Don't confront your wife yet. Don't let her know you're investigating. The moment she knows you're onto her, she'll start moving money, hiding assets, creating her own counter-narrative. You need to stay quiet until you're ready to file. I understand. I hung up and immediately started the process of freezing my credit. It was bureaucratic and tedious. Automated phone systems, security questions, confirmation codes sent via email. But within an hour, all 3 bureaus had frozen my credit. Sarah couldn't open another account in my name without me knowing. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. I was fighting back. I was protecting myself. By the time I actually made it to my office, nearly 10 a.m., my assistant Jennifer looked up in surprise when I walked in. "You okay?" she asked. "You look exhausted." "Rough night," I said, which was true enough. "I need you to block out my calendar Wednesday afternoon. Personal appointment can't be moved." "Done. Also, Henderson wants to meet about the Patterson account. I told him you'd get back to him." Work, right? I still had an actual job, still had responsibilities that existed outside of my imploding marriage. I forced myself to focus, to be present, to do the things I was being paid to do. It was almost a relief having something concrete to concentrate on, numbers and projections and client meetings. Things that made sense. Things that followed logical patterns. Unlike my life, which had become a maze of deception I was still trying to map. At lunch, I drove home while Sarah was at work. I had 2 hours before I needed to be back at the office. 2 hours while the house was empty and I could move freely without explanation. I went to our bathroom first, to Sarah's side of the counter. Her hairbrush sat in its usual spot, tangled with blonde strands. I carefully selected 10 hairs with visible roots attached, placed them in a plastic baggie I'd brought for exactly this purpose, and tucked it in my jacket pocket. Evidence. DNA. Truth. Then I went to our bedroom and systematically photographed everything in the blue box the stranger had given me. Every video, every message, every financial document. I uploaded them to a cloud storage account Sarah didn't know about, password protected and secured. Backups of backups. If Sarah somehow found the tablet, if she destroyed it, I'd still have copies. I was learning to think like she did, to plan for contingencies, to trust nothing.
While I was there, I checked our bedroom more carefully, where there are other things I'd missed, other signs of Sarah's deception hiding in plain sight. I found them in her nightstand drawer, buried under old magazines and a novel she'd been reading. A second cell phone. The cheap, prepaid kind you buy at convenience stores. I turned it on. No password, which seemed sloppy for someone as careful as Sarah, but maybe she'd never expected me to look. The text message. History was all Marcus. Hundreds of messages going back months. I scrolled through them quickly, my stomach churning with each new revelation. Miss you, baby. Can't wait to be done with this charade. Only 6 more months and we can be together. The pregnancy test was positive. My heart stopped. I checked the date on that message. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before Sarah had told me she was pregnant, she'd known for 2 weeks and hadn't said anything. Had waited for the perfect moment, the perfect dramatic reveal. Or had she been coordinating with Marcus, making sure their stories aligned? I kept scrolling. Did you tell him yet? Tonight. Wish me luck. You won't need luck. He'll be thrilled. Idiot probably already thinks you're perfect. He does. It's almost sad. I took pictures of every message, uploaded them to my secure cloud storage, and carefully replaced the phone exactly as I'd found it. By the time I left the house, I had enough evidence to bury Sarah in court. Enough to prove fraud, adultery, financial crimes. Enough to ensure that when this marriage ended, and it would end, there was no saving it. I wouldn't be the one destroyed. At 4:30 p.m., I was sitting in Dr. Chen's office, handing over the baggie of Sarah's hair and providing my own cheek swab. Results will take about a week, Dr. Chen said, labeling the samples with care. I'll call you as soon as they're ready. The number I have on file, is that safe? It's my cell. Sarah doesn't have access to it. Good. And Mr. Morrison, whatever the results show, you'll want to have a support system in place. This kind of betrayal, it's traumatic. Don't underestimate that. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Because she was right. This was traumatic. Every new piece of evidence, every new layer of deception uncovered felt like another wound. Death by 1,000 cuts. Each one delivered by someone I'd loved, someone I'd trusted, someone who'd never loved me at all. I drove home in rush hour traffic, my mind spinning with everything I'd learned, everything I'd set in motion. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd composed my face into something approaching normally. Sarah's car was already there. She was home early. I found her in the kitchen making dinner, humming along to music playing from her phone. She looked up when I walked in, smiled brightly. Hey, how was work? Busy, I said, kissing her cheek. The gesture felt mechanical, performative. Smells good. What are you making? Chicken marsala, your favorite. She stirred something on the stove, then turned to face me fully. I made a doctor's appointment for Thursday, for the pregnancy. Do you want to come with me? A doctor's appointment where they'd confirm the pregnancy, do an ultrasound, maybe even estimate the conception date. Sarah was committing to the lie, building it layer by layer. Of course I want to come, I said. I wouldn't miss it. She beamed at me, and I saw it clearly now. The calculation behind the smile, the performance behind the warmth. She was playing a role, and she was playing it well. But so was I. I love you, she said, wrapping her arms around me. I love you too, I replied, and the words were ash in my mouth. We ate dinner together. We put Emma to bed together. We went through all the motions of being a married couple, a family, 2 people building a life, and the whole time I counted down the days until Wednesday, until my appointment with Margaret Hollis, until I could start building my exit strategy. Sarah thought she had all the power, all the control, all the cards. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Wednesday arrived wrapped in rain, the kind of cold October downpour that turns the world gray and makes everything feel like an ending.
I told Sarah I had back-to-back meetings all afternoon, wouldn't be home until after 6.
She kissed me goodbye and told me to drive safely, her hand resting on her stomach like she was already protecting our child from the world. Our child. The lie sat between us like a third person at breakfast, invisible but heavy. Margaret Hollis's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel, and the kind of expensive minimalism that announced success without saying a word. I arrived 15 minutes early, soaked from the parking garage to the building entrance, despite my umbrella, and sat in the waiting room trying to organize my thoughts. I'd brought everything David Kim had requested: bank statements, credit reports, copies of the fraudulent credit card applications. I'd also brought the tablet, though I wasn't sure if I should show it to the lawyer. It was evidence, yes, but evidence obtained by a stranger through means I didn't understand and couldn't verify. Would it be admissible? Would it help or hurt my case, Mr. Morrison? A woman emerged from the inner office, mid-50s, silver hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a suit that probably costs more than my monthly mortgage. "I'm Margaret Hollis. Come in." Her office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, rain streaking down the glass like tears. She gestured to a chair across from her desk, and I sat, suddenly feeling like I was back in the principal's office in middle school, about to explain why I'd failed a test I should have passed. "Tell me what's happening," she said, pulling out a legal pad. "No preamble, no small talk, just straight to business." So, I told her everything. The cafe, the stranger, the blue box, the videos of Sarah and Marcus, the messages detailing their plan, the financial fraud, the drained accounts, the credit cards, the systematic theft, Sarah's pregnancy announcement, and the suspicion that the baby might not be mine. Margaret took notes the entire time, her expression neutral, professional. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. "How are you holding up?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. I'd expected her to dive into legal strategy, to start outlining options and timelines. Instead, she was asking about me, about how I felt. And I stopped, started again. I don't know. Angry, hurt, numb. Mostly like this is happening to someone else, and I'm just watching it unfold. She nodded. That's normal trauma response. Your brain is protecting you from the full impact, because if you felt it all at once, you wouldn't be functional. But eventually, you're going to need to process it. Have you considered therapy? I've been a little busy trying to save my financial life. I understand, but Mr. Morrison, David, you need to understand that this isn't just a legal battle. This is psychological warfare. Your wife has spent years manipulating you, and even now that you know the truth, part of you probably still wants to believe she loves you, that this is all a mistake or misunderstanding. That's what makes cases like this so difficult. The evidence is clear, but the heart takes longer to catch up. I thought about Sarah's smile that morning, the way she'd straightened my collar before I left for work, the casual intimacy of someone who'd shared my bed in my life for 2 years. Part of me still loved her, or loved the version of her I'd thought was real. Margaret was right. My heart was slower than my head. "What do I do?" I asked. She leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled, considering. "First, let's talk about this tablet and the stranger who gave it to you. You said you don't know who he is." "No, he just appeared, gave me the box, and left." "And you have no way to contact him? No way to verify how he obtained this evidence?" "There was a letter. He said he'd been watching Sarah, investigating her, that she'd done this before to other men." That's concerning from a legal standpoint. If this goes to court, opposing counsel will argue that the evidence was obtained illegally through stalking, harassment, invasion of privacy. They'll try to get it thrown out. Even if it's true, even if it proves Sarah committed fraud, truth doesn't matter if the evidence is inadmissible. The question isn't whether Sarah did these things. The question is whether we can prove it in court using legally obtained evidence. Margaret tapped her pen against her legal pad. However, what the stranger gave you is still valuable. It tells us what to look for. It gives us a roadmap. We just need to find the same evidence through legitimate channels. How? The financial fraud is easiest. You have joint accounts, so you have every right to access statements and transaction records. I'll have David Kim do a full forensic analysis. That will be admissible because it's your money and your accounts. The fraudulent credit cards are also straightforward. Those are crimes, and you can report them to the police and the credit bureaus. And the affair? Trickier. In this state, adultery is technically a factor in divorce proceedings, but it rarely impacts the financial settlement unless you can prove the affair directly harmed your economic interests, which, in this case, you can. If Sarah was spending marital assets on her lover, that's dissipation of assets. We'd need receipts, bank records, proof of where the money went. I thought about the messages about Sarah and Marcus at expensive restaurants, about gifts and trips, and all the ways Sarah had been spending my money on her other life. I can get that, I said. The pregnancy is the most complicated piece, Margaret continued. If you're on the birth certificate, you're legally the father regardless of biology. Even if paternity testing later proves the child isn't yours, you could still be on the hook for child support. The courts prioritize the best interests of the child, not the father's right to genetic certainty. That's insane. That's the law. Which is why we need to be very strategic about how we handle this. When is your wife due? She said she's 6 weeks along now, so sometime in June, I guess. And you've arranged for DNA testing. Dr. Chen is running tests now. I should have results early next week. Good. But those results are for your knowledge only. They won't be admissible unless your wife commits to testing, which she won't. So we need to plan for 2 scenarios. One where the baby is yours, one where it isn't. If the baby is yours, you'll want to establish paternity and fight for custody. If it isn't, we'll need to prove fraud and challenge paternity before the birth if possible. My head was spinning. Scenarios and contingencies and legal strategies that all depended on variables I couldn't control. What do you recommend? Margaret was quiet for a long moment, studying me. Honestly, I recommend you don't tell your wife anything yet. Continue playing the supportive husband. Go to her doctor's appointments. Act excited about the baby. Let her think everything is going according to her plan. While doing what? While we build an airtight case, David Kim will trace every penny. I'll work with a private investigator to document the affair through legal surveillance. If Sarah and Marcus are still seeing each other, we can get photos, records of hotel stays, everything we need. We'll pull phone records, email records if we can get court permission, and we'll prepare for multiple outcomes. How long will that take? 2 months, maybe 3. We'll file for divorce before your wife hits her 2nd trimester, before the pregnancy is too advanced. We'll cite irreconcilable differences initially, keep it clean and simple. Then, once the divorce is filed, we'll start introducing evidence of fraud and adultery. By the time you're in front of a judge for the settlement hearing, we'll have everything documented. 2 months. 2 more months of living this lie, of sleeping next to Sarah, of pretending I didn't know she was destroying me. I don't know if I can do that, I said quietly. You can, Margaret said firmly, because the alternative is worse. If you confront her now, she'll hire her own lawyer, probably one who's better at playing dirty than I am, and she'll start building a counter-narrative. She'll claim you're abusive, controlling, paranoid. She'll take your daughter and disappear, file for emergency custody. She'll drain what's left in your accounts and you'll spend the next year fighting just to get supervised visitation. Emma's not my daughter. Not legally, but you love her. You've been acting as her father. That creates a bond the courts recognize, and Sarah knows it. She knows you'll fight to stay in Emma's life, which gives her leverage. The more you care, the more power she has. I thought about Emma at the park asking me to push her higher on the swings. Emma at bedtime begging for one more story. Emma who'd started drawing pictures of our family,
Her mom, me, and now a new baby on the way. Margaret was right. I did love Emma, and Sarah would absolutely use that against me. So, what's the timeline? I asked. Margaret pulled up a calendar on her computer. Today is Wednesday, October 18th. I'll bring David Kim up to speed immediately. He can have preliminary findings within a week. I'll also engage James Rodriguez for surveillance on your wife and her lover. We'll spend the next 6 to 8 weeks gathering evidence, building the case, documenting everything. Then we'll file for divorce the first week of December before the holidays. I know it seems cruel, but timing matters. If we wait until after the new year, your wife will be deeper into her pregnancy and judges get more sympathetic. File now, and we control the narrative. I sat there trying to imagine filing for divorce while Sarah was pregnant, while Emma was probably writing her Christmas list, while the world was supposed to be full of joy and family and togetherness. But Sarah had made these choices. Sarah had built this house of cards. I was just the one lighting the match. Okay, I said. We file in December. In the meantime, you need to protect yourself financially. I know David Kim already told you to freeze your credit, which is good, but you also need to start separating your assets carefully, quietly, in ways your wife won't notice. How? Open a new bank account in your name only. Nothing fancy, just a basic checking account at a different bank than where you have your joint accounts. Start having your paychecks direct deposited there instead of the joint account. If your wife asks, tell her your company changed payroll systems or something. She won't question it. What about the money already in the joint accounts? Leave it for now. If you drain them, that's a red flag, but stop putting new money in. Over the next 2 months, that account will naturally deplete as she continues her withdrawals. But you'll be building a separate safety net she doesn't know about. It felt deceptive. Then I remembered I was married to someone who'd been deceiving me since the day we met, and my guilt evaporated. I'll do it, I said. Margaret made more notes, then looked up. One more thing. Your wife's doctor's appointment tomorrow. Are you still planning to go? I'd almost forgotten about that. The OB appointment, the ultrasound, the first glimpse of the baby that might not even be mine. I told her I'd be there. Then go play the excited father. But pay attention. See if you can get a copy of the ultrasound images, the doctor's notes, anything that establishes timeline. The more documentation we have, the better. You want me to spy on my wife at her prenatal appointment? I want you to protect yourself, Margaret corrected. Your wife is playing a long game. You need to play it too, and you need to play it better. That means documentation. That means being strategic. That means not letting emotions cloud your judgment. She was right. Of course, this wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about survival. We spent another hour going over details, what documents I still needed to gather, what financial moves I needed to make, what to say and not say to Sarah in the coming weeks. By the time I left her office, I had a plan, a timeline, a strategy. I also had a retainer agreement that cost me $10,000. Money I paid from my personal savings. Money Sarah didn't know about. Money that bought me the best divorce lawyer in the city. It was worth every penny. The rain had stopped by the time I reached my car, but the sky was still gray, still heavy with the promise of more storms coming. I sat in the parking garage for a few minutes, engine running, trying to gather myself for the drive home. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Hope your meetings went well. Making your favorite for dinner. Love you. 3 sentences, 3 lies. She didn't care about my meetings. The dinner was part of her performance as the perfect wife, and she definitely didn't love me. I typed back, sounds great. See you soon. Love you too. 4 lies for 3. We were matched in our deception now, but mine had a purpose. Mine was self-defense. Hers was just cruelty dressed up as love. I drove home through the darkening afternoon, past houses with lights coming on in windows, past families sitting down to dinner together. past lives that made sense, and love that was real. And I thought about the stranger with the blue box. Whoever he was, wherever he was, he'd saved me, warned me before it was too late, given me the tools I needed to fight back. Someday when this was over, I wanted to find him, to thank him, to ask him why he'd chosen to help me. What had happened to him that made him spend his time protecting other men from women like Sarah? But for now, I had a role to play. I pulled into my driveway. Sarah's car was there, lights on in the house, smoke rising from the chimney because she knew I liked fires on cold autumn evenings. Everything perfect. Everything calculated. I took a breath, composed my face, and went inside to have dinner with my wife. The wife who was planning my destruction. The wife who had no idea I was planning hers right back. Thursday morning, I woke up to Sarah's alarm at 7. She'd set it early so we'd have time for breakfast before her 9:30 appointment. Our appointment, she kept saying, like the possessive pronoun would make it more real, more ours. I'm nervous, she said, sitting at the edge of the bed in her robe, one hand on her stomach. Always that hand, always that gesture. I wondered if she practiced it in mirrors when I wasn't around. Why nervous? I asked, though I could think of plenty of reasons. What if the ultrasound showed she was further along than 6 weeks? What if the dates didn't match up with when we'd been together? What if the doctor asked questions she hadn't prepared answers for? I don't know. First baby jitters, I guess. She turned to look at me and there were tears in her eyes. Real ones or manufactured ones, I couldn't tell anymore. What if something's wrong? I sat up, pulled her into my arms because that's what the old David would have done. The David from a week ago who trusted her, who loved her without reservation. Nothing's wrong. You're healthy. You're young. Everything is going to be fine. She leaned into me and I felt her relax slightly. I'm glad you're coming with me. I know work is busy, but this is important. Nothing is more important than this, I said, and meant it in a way she couldn't understand. This appointment was important, but not for the reason she thought. I needed to see the ultrasound. Needed to get documentation, needed to understand the timeline so I could match it against the dates Sarah had been with Marcus. The dates she'd been creating a baby that might not be mine. We got dressed. Sarah in a loose dress that didn't show anything yet. Me in slacks and a button-down shirt because I was coming from morning meetings that didn't exist. We dropped Emma at school together, both of us waving as she ran toward her classroom, backpack bouncing against her small shoulders. She's so excited about being a big sister, Sarah said as we drove away. She asked me last night if the baby would be a boy or a girl. I told her we wouldn't know for a while yet. What did she say? She wants a sister, someone to play dolls with. Sarah laughed softly. I told her brothers can play dolls too, but she wasn't convinced. We were having a normal conversation, a sweet, domestic conversation about children and futures and family planning. And underneath it all, I was counting the days until I filed for divorce, until I destroyed this facade we were both maintaining. December 1st, Margaret Hollis had circled it on her calendar. 6 weeks from now, I could make it 6 more weeks. The OB's office was in a medical complex near the hospital where Sarah worked. We checked in at the reception desk, filled out paperwork, or rather, Sarah filled it out while I sat beside her, watching her hand move across the forms with practiced efficiency. Previous pregnancies? 1. Previous births? 1. Complications? None. Current medications? Prenatal vitamins? She was so calm, so collected. No hesitation, no nervousness, like she'd done this before, which she had with Emma, but also like she had nothing to hide. Maybe she didn't. Maybe the baby really was mine. Maybe her plan was just to have my child and then leave me, not to pass off Marcus's baby as mine. That would be simpler, cleaner, less risky. But I'd learned not to assume anything when it came to Sarah. She was too calculating, too careful. Everything had a purpose. Morrison, a nurse, called from the doorway, clipboard in hand. We followed her back to an exam room. She took Sarah's blood pressure, weight, asked the standard questions about symptoms and last menstrual period. Sarah answered everything with the easy confidence of someone who'd rehearsed her story until it was seamless. "The doctor will be in shortly," the nurse said, handing Sarah a folded paper gown. "Go ahead and change everything off from the waist down. There's a sheet to cover up with." She left and Sarah started undressing. I turned away, giving her privacy, even though I'd seen every inch of her body countless times, even though we were married, because suddenly I felt like I was intruding on something private, something that belonged to her and Marcus, not to her and me. "You okay?" Sarah asked. "You're quiet." "Just taking it all in," I said. "This is real, you know? We're really having a baby." "We really are." She settled onto the exam table, sheet covering her legs. "Come sit next to me." I pulled the chair close, took her hand. Her palm was slightly sweaty. Nerves, maybe, or guilt. I squeezed her fingers and waited. Dr. Patterson arrived a few minutes later, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and sensible shoes. She shook both our hands, congratulated us, asked Sarah how she was feeling. "Tired," Sarah said. "Some nausea in the mornings, but nothing terrible." "That's normal. First trimester can be rough, but it sounds like you're managing well." Dr. Patterson pulled up a stool, flipped through Sarah's chart. "So, based on your last menstrual period, you should be about 6 weeks and 3 days today. That means we'll do a transvaginal ultrasound. It's too early for an abdominal one. We should be able to see the gestational sac and hopefully a heartbeat." 6 weeks and 3 days. I did the math quickly in my head. That would put conception around September 7th or 8th. We'd been married 2.5 months. Then I'd been traveling for work the first week of September, a conference in Denver. I'd gotten home on the 6th. Had Sarah been with Marcus while I was gone? Had she carefully timed everything so she couldn't be sure who the father was? Or had she been with me that weekend and gotten pregnant legitimately? Her plan simply to use the baby as leverage, regardless of its origins. I needed that DNA test. Needed Dr. Chen to call with results. Needed to know the truth. Dr. Patterson prepared the ultrasound equipment while Sarah positioned herself for the exam. I held her hand and tried not to think about all the ways this moment should have been different. Should have been joyful and hopeful and full of love instead of lies and manipulation and cold strategic planning. The monitor flickered to life, black and gray shadows that meant nothing to me. Dr. Patterson moved the wand carefully, studying the screen with practiced focus. "There," she said, pointing to a small dark circle. "That's the gestational sac." And there, she adjusted the angle slightly. "That's the yolk sac. Everything looks right on track for 6 weeks. Is there a heartbeat?" Sarah's voice was tight with what sounded like genuine anxiety. "Let me check." More adjusting, more shadows moving across the screen, then suddenly, a flutter. A tiny, rapid pulsing in the center of the sac. "That's the heartbeat," Dr. Patterson said, smiling. "About 110 beats per minute, which is perfect for this stage. Congratulations! You have a healthy pregnancy." Sarah started crying. Real tears this time. I was certain of it. Whatever else she'd lied about, whatever else was manufactured, her emotion in this moment felt genuine. She was looking at the screen with wonder and fear and something that might have been love. And I felt nothing. Just a distant observation. There's a heartbeat. There's a baby. It might be mine, or it might not be. But either way, it exists. "Can I get a picture?" Sarah asked through her tears. "Of course." Dr. Patterson pressed a button, and the machine printing out ultrasound images. She handed them to Sarah, who clutched them like precious artifacts. "Look, David," she said, showing me the grainy black and white image. "That's our baby." I looked at the small flutter on the printout, at the tiny cluster of cells that might share my DNA or might share Marcus's. and I made myself smile. "It's amazing," I said. And it was amazing in an abstract way. A new life beginning, completely unaware of the chaos and deception surrounding its creation. Innocent, blameless. I felt a surge of protectiveness toward that flutter on the screen, that tiny heartbeat. Whatever happened, whoever the father turned out to be, this baby deserved better than to be a pawn in Sarah's games. Dr. Patterson finished the exam, gave Sarah information about prenatal vitamins and what to avoid during pregnancy, scheduled the next appointment for 4 weeks out. Sarah dressed while I stood by the window, staring out at the parking lot and trying to process what I'd just seen. A heartbeat, a baby, a life being built on a foundation of lies. "Ready?" Sarah asked, tucking the ultrasound pictures carefully into her purse. "Ready?" We walked out to the car in silence. Sarah was glowing. There was no other word for it. She looked happy and hopeful and exactly like a woman who'd just seen her baby for the first time. She looked like someone in love with her life. And maybe she was. Maybe in her mind this was all working out perfectly. Pregnant with a baby that would secure her financial future. Married to a man who suspected nothing. Planning a life with her real lover once the divorce was final. Maybe Sarah genuinely thought she was winning. She had no idea I was counting down the days until I took it all away from her. "I wish we could tell Emma now," Sarah said as I drove us home. "She'd be so excited." "Soon," I said. "Let's wait until the second trimester like we planned. Make sure everything is stable." "You're right. I'm just impatient." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Thank you for coming today, for being so supportive. I know this happened fast, but you've been amazing through all of it. Through all of it. Through her lies," she meant through her manipulation. "Through her systematic destruction of my financial life while playing the role of loving wife." "Of course," I said. "We're in this together." Another lie. We were in nothing together. We were enemies pretending to be partners. Both of us waiting for the right moment to strike. I just hope my moment came before hers. When we got home, Sarah went to lie down. She was tired, she said, which the doctor had told her was normal. I said I had work to catch up on and retreated to my home office, closing the door behind me. I pulled out my phone and texted Margaret Hollis. Attended OB appointment. Baby measures 6 weeks, 3 days, heartbeat present. Have ultrasound images. What next? Her response came within minutes. "Good. That gives us conception date around September 7th or 8th. Were you with your wife during that window?" "I was traveling until September 6th, home on the 7th. So conception could have been with you or with the other man. We need that paternity test. Any word from Dr. Chen?" I checked my call log. No missed calls. Not yet. She said it would take a week. Keep me posted. In the meantime, get copies of those ultrasound images to me. I want them on file. I photographed the images Sarah had left on the kitchen counter and sent them to Margaret. Documentation, evidence, building the case brick by brick. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello, Mr. Morrison. This is Dr. Chen." My heart rate spiked. "You have the results already?" "I expedited them given the situation. Do you have a moment to talk privately?" I glanced at my office door, closed. Sarah, in bed 2 rooms away. "Yes, the results are conclusive," Dr. Chen said, her voice gentle but professional. "Based on the samples you provided, there is 0 probability of paternity. You are not the biological father of your wife's pregnancy." The words hit like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. Hoping against hope, maybe, that Sarah's betrayal hadn't gone quite that deep. That she'd at least gotten pregnant with me, even if her plan was still to use the baby as leverage. But no. Even that small mercy was a lie. "You're certain?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The samples were clear and uncontaminated. The results are definitive."
I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison. I sat there in my office chair, staring at nothing, and felt the last piece of my marriage crumble to dust. Sarah wasn't just lying about loving me. She was lying about everything. The baby she'd cried over this morning, the heartbeat we'd seen together, the future we were supposedly building. None of it was mine. None of it had ever been mine. Mr. Morrison, are you still there? I'm here, I said. Can you send me the official report? I'll email it within the hour. And Mr. Morrison, I'm truly sorry. I've worked with several of his referrals over the years, and these cases never get easier. But you're doing the right thing by protecting yourself. Thank you, I said, and ended the call. I sat in the silence of my office for a long time, listening to the house settle around me. Somewhere in the bedroom, Sarah was resting, one hand on her stomach, protecting a baby that wasn't mine, planning a future that didn't include me, except as a financial resource to be exploited. I pulled up my texts with Margaret Hollis. DNA results are in. I'm not the father. Her response was immediate. I'm sorry, but this changes everything. We can now pursue fraud charges, challenge paternity. This significantly strengthens your case. What do I do? Nothing. Not yet. Continue as planned. Do not let her know you have these results. We file on December 1st as scheduled, but now we're not just filing for divorce. We're filing fraud charges. She tried to pass off another man's child is yours. That's a crime. I thought about Sarah's tears this morning, her genuine emotion at seeing the ultrasound. Had she forgotten in that moment that the baby wasn't mine? Had she been so deep in her own lie that she'd convinced herself it was real? Or had those tears been for Marcus's baby, for the future they were building together, and I just misinterpreted them as joy meant for me? I'd never know. And it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had proof, definitive, scientific proof that Sarah had lied about the most fundamental thing a person could lie about. And in 6 weeks, I was going to use that proof to destroy her. November arrived with cold winds and bare trees, and I became someone I didn't recognize. Not David Morrison, the divorced architect who'd thought he'd found a second chance at love. Not the naive husband who'd believed his beautiful young wife's every word. Someone else entirely. Someone harder. Someone who could smile and lie and plot revenge while serving breakfast to a 7-year-old girl who didn't deserve any of this. The transformation wasn't immediate. It happened in increments, in small betrayals of the man I used to be. The first time I kissed Sarah, knowing the baby wasn't mine, I felt sick afterward. Had to lock myself in the bathroom and splash cold water on my face until the nausea passed. The second time was easier. By the 10th, I felt nothing at all. That should have worried me more than it did. You seem different lately, Sarah said one evening in mid-November. We were doing dishes together. She washed, I dried, our established routine. Emma was in bed. The house was quiet. It should have been peaceful. Instead, it felt like standing on a frozen lake waiting for the ice to crack beneath us. Different how? I asked, drying a plate with methodical precision. I don't know. Distant, maybe? Like you're here, but not really here. She handed me another plate, her fingers brushing mine. Is everything okay? Work stress. Work was actually the one part of my life that made sense anymore. Projects had clear timelines, budgets had hard numbers. Clients either approved designs or they didn't. Unlike marriage, unlike trust, unlike love, work followed rules that couldn't be manipulated. Just the Patterson account, I said, which was partially true. Big presentation next week. I've been distracted. Well, don't forget we have the second ultrasound on Thursday. I want to find out if it's a boy or girl, don't you? It's not mine, I thought. Why would I care? Of course, I said aloud. I wouldn't miss it. She smiled, relieved, and went back to washing. I dried. We moved through our routine like dancers who'd practiced the steps so many times they didn't need to think about them anymore. Muscle memory. Married memory. In 3 weeks, it would all be over. Margaret Hollis had everything ready. The divorce papers were drafted, the fraud charges prepared. David Kim had traced every penny Sarah had stolen. The total was up to $52,000 now, not including the credit card debt. James Rodriguez, the private investigator, had been following Sarah and Marcus for 5 weeks and had compiled a dossier thick enough to choke on photos of them at restaurants, at his apartment, at a hotel in Portland, where they had spent a weekend while Sarah told me she was at a nursing conference. She'd been sloppy, or maybe just confident. I'd never find out. Either way, we had everything we needed. "I've been thinking," Sarah said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about names."
If it's a girl, I was thinking maybe Claire. And if it's a boy, maybe James. What do you think? Names? She was naming a baby that wasn't mine, asking my opinion like I had any right to it. Like I'd be in this child's life long enough for a name to matter. "Those are nice," I said neutrally. "You don't sound enthusiastic." "I'm just tired, Sarah. The names are fine. Great, even." She turned to look at me. Really look at me. And I saw something flicker across her face. Suspicion, maybe, or uncertainty.
"David, if something's wrong, you can tell me. We're partners. We're supposed to be able to talk about things." Partners. The word was almost funny. Partners implied equality, honesty, shared goals. We were none of those things. We were a con artist in her mark, and the mark had finally woken up. "Nothing's wrong," I said, and kissed her forehead. "I promise. Just work stress and not enough sleep. I'll be fine once this presentation is done." She seemed to accept this, or at least pretended to. We finished the dishes. We watched TV for an hour. Some home renovation show Sarah loved where couples fought about backsplashes and then cried when they saw the finished product. She curled against me on the couch, my arm around her shoulders, her hand on her growing belly. 4 months pregnant now, starting to show, though she hid it well under loose sweaters and careful posture. In another month, she wouldn't be able to hide it at all. In another month, everyone would know she was pregnant, and by then, everyone would also know we were getting divorced. I wondered what story she'd tell, what narrative she'd spin to make herself the victim. Probably that I'd left her when she was pregnant, couldn't handle the stress of fatherhood, abandoned her and Emma when they needed me most. Let her tell whatever story she wanted. I had evidence. I had documentation. I had the truth. My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. "All set for December 1st. Process server will deliver papers to your wife at 9 a.m. Make sure you're not home. Make sure Emma is at school," I replied. "Understood." December 1st, 3 weeks away. I'd circled it on my calendar in my office, had been crossing off days like a prisoner counting down to freedom. 21 days, 504 hours, 30,240 minutes. Not that I was obsessing. "What are you smiling about?" Sarah asked, looking up at me. I hadn't realized I was smiling. "Nothing. Just thinking about something funny that happened at work." "Tell me." "It's boring architect humor. You wouldn't find it funny." She poked my ribs. "Try me." So, I made up a story about a client who'd wanted impossible cantilevers, and Henderson's sarcastic response, and Sarah laughed in all the right places. And I felt nothing. No guilt about lying, no shame about deception, just cold calculation. 3 more weeks of this performance, and then freedom. What scared me was how good I'd gotten at it. How easily the lies came now. How naturally I played the role of devoted husband when inside I was counting down to her destruction. Was this who I was becoming? Someone who could smile and plot revenge simultaneously? Someone who could hold his wife while planning to ruin her? Or was this who I'd always been? and I just hadn't known it until Sarah taught me. The second ultrasound appointment came on a Thursday morning in late November. Thanksgiving was a week away. Sarah had been planning dinner, talking about inviting her parents, making lists of dishes to prepare. I'd been nodding along while privately planning to file for divorce 3 days after the holiday. Timing was everything, Margaret had said. File before Thanksgiving and Sarah would play the abandoned pregnant wife at family dinner, would gather sympathy and support. File after, and she'd be blindsided, off balance, less able to mount a coordinated defense. We were at the OB's office again, same waiting room, same nervous, expectant couples around us. Except this time, Sarah was visibly pregnant, wearing maternity jeans and a loose top that couldn't quite hide her bump. "I'm so excited," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Finally getting to find out if it's a boy or girl." "Me too," I lied. Dr. Patterson called us back. This time it was an abdominal ultrasound. Sarah lay on the exam table, shirt pulled up to expose her rounded stomach, and the doctor squeezed gel across her skin. I sat in a chair beside her, holding her hand, because that's what supportive husbands did. The monitor flickered to life, and there it was. A baby. Not just a flutter and a sack this time, but an actual baby with a head and tiny arms and legs that kicked lazily in the amniotic fluid. The image was so clear, so undeniably human that for a moment I forgot whose baby it was. Forgot about Marcus and Sarah's plan and the DNA test that proved I was genetically irrelevant to this life. For just a moment, I saw what I'd wanted to see 2 months ago. My child. Our future. Everything we were supposed to be building together. Then reality crashed back in, cold and unforgiving. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Patterson said, moving the wand across Sarah's belly. "Strong heartbeat, good size for gestational age. Would you like to know the sex?" "Yes," Sarah said immediately. "Definitely yes." Dr. Patterson angled the wand, carefully studying the screen. "Congratulations. It's a girl." Sarah started crying. Happy tears. Overwhelmed tears. The kind of emotional response you'd expect from a first-time mother finding out she was having a daughter. She looked at me with shining eyes and said, "We're having a girl, David. A little girl." "That's wonderful," I said. And somewhere deep inside, past all the anger and betrayal and cold calculation, I felt a twist of genuine grief because this should have been wonderful. This should have been one of the best moments of my life, finding out I was having a daughter, planning for her future, imagining teaching her to ride a bike or helping with homework or walking her down the aisle someday. Instead, it was just another lie in a long chain of lies. Another thing Sarah had stolen from me.
"Can we get pictures?" Sarah asked.
Dr. Patterson printed out several ultrasound images, the baby's profile, her tiny hands, her feet. Sarah clutched them like treasure, showing me each one with breathless excitement. "Look at her nose. She has your nose, David. Don't you think she didn't have my nose? She didn't have any of my features because she didn't have any of my DNA. She was Marcus's daughter, not mine." But Sarah was so deep in her own performance that maybe she'd actually convinced herself the lie was true. Or maybe she just didn't care. We left the appointment with Sarah, chattering about nursery colors and baby names and whether Claire or maybe Charlotte would be better for a girl. I drove and nodded and made appropriate comments while my mind was calculating. 11 days until December 1st. 264 hours. 15,840 minutes. I could make it. "I want to tell Emma tonight," Sarah said as we pulled into our driveway. "She's been asking when we'd tell her. I think she suspects anyway. She asked me yesterday why my stomach was getting fat. I almost laughed out of the mouths of babes. Sure, we can tell her at dinner." So that evening, after Sarah made Emma's favorite meal, chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs because Emma was 7 and dinosaur nuggets were still peak cuisine, We sat our daughter down and told her she was going to be a big sister. Emma's reaction was pure, uncomplicated joy. She squealed and jumped and asked 1,000 questions. When would the baby come? Could she help pick out clothes? Would the baby sleep in her room? Could she teach the baby to draw? Sarah answered each question with patience and love. And I watched them together, mother and daughter, bonded by blood and history and genuine affection, and felt that twist of grief again because Emma loved Sarah. Emma trusted Sarah. And when the divorce happened, when the truth came out about the fraud and the affair and the lies, Emma was going to be devastated. That was on Sarah. I reminded myself Sarah had made these choices. Sarah had built this house of cards. I was just the one who'd been handed the match. Still, Emma deserved better than to be caught in the middle of this. David, Emma's voice pulled me back to the present. Aren't you excited? I looked at her gap to smile and her bright eyes and her complete innocence, and I forced enthusiasm into my voice. I'm so excited, sweetheart. You're going to be an amazing big sister. She beamed at me, and Sarah reached across the table to squeeze my hand. And for anyone looking in from outside, we were the perfect family. Happy, stable, full of love and promise. The mask was flawless. That night, after Emma was asleep and Sarah had gone to bed early, pregnancy made her tired, she said. I sat in my office with the blue box the stranger had given me all those weeks ago. I'd looked at the contents so many times I'd memorized them. Every video, every message, every financial document. But tonight, I opened the README folder again and reread the letter from the stranger. Be the kind of man who doesn't let someone destroy him without fighting back. I'd taken his advice, followed his roadmap, built my case carefully and quietly. In 11 days, I'd strike back in a way Sarah would never see coming. But at what cost? I looked at the ultrasound pictures Sarah had left on my desk. The baby girl who wasn't mine. The daughter I'd never meet. The life I'd never be part of. In another timeline, if Sarah had been honest, if she'd actually loved me, this could have been everything I wanted. Instead, it was just evidence in a fraud case. I put the pictures in a folder with all the other documentation, organized them by date, labeled them clearly. Margaret would need them for court. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. You're doing the right thing. Stay strong. Almost there. I stared at the message. The stranger? It had to be. No one else knew what was happening, what I was planning. Margaret and her team were professionals who wouldn't text me personal encouragement. This had to be the man from the cafe, the one who'd given me the blue box, the one who'd saved me from complete destruction. I typed back, "Who are you?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, someone who understands. Good luck, David. The number went dead after that. When I tried to call it, I got an automated message that it was no longer in service. Burner phone, probably. The stranger was careful, smart, just like I'd learned to be. I went to bed around midnight, climbed in beside Sarah, who was already deeply asleep, one hand on her growing belly, even in unconsciousness, protecting Marcus's baby, planning her future, completely unaware that in 11 days, everything she'd built was going to collapse. I closed my eyes and counted down. 10 days, 23 hours, 47 minutes. Almost there. Thanksgiving came and went like a fever dream. Sarah's parents drove up from Sacramento. Her mother, Helen, who fussed over Sarah's pregnancy and kept touching her belly like it contained something precious. And her father, Tom, who shook my hand too hard and called me son and told me how proud he was that I was taking care of his girls. I carved the turkey and smiled and accepted their congratulations and hated every second of it. Not because of them. They were decent people who had no idea their daughter was a fraud, but because I knew what was coming in 5 days and I knew it would destroy them too. You seem quiet,
Helen said to me while we were loading the dishwasher after dinner. Sarah and Tom were in the living room with Emma looking at baby furniture catalogs. "Everything all right with you and Sarah?" "Everything's fine," I said, handing her a plate. "Just work stress. Big project wrapping up. You work too hard."
She said the same thing Sarah always said, like they'd rehearsed it. "You need to slow down, especially now with the baby coming. Sarah's going to need you." Sarah's not going to have me. I thought in 5 days, Sarah's going to have divorce papers and fraud charges and a very different life than the one she's planning. "I know," I said aloud. "I'll take some time off after the baby comes." Another lie. They came so easily now, slipped out like breathing. Had become fluent in deception, learned the language from a master. Helen smiled, satisfied, and went back to washing dishes. And I stood there in my kitchen, in my house, with my wife's family, and counted down. 4 days, 17 hours, 32 minutes. December 1st arrived cold and clear. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., even though my alarm wasn't set until 6, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop my mind from running through everything that was about to happen. Margaret had walked me through the timeline a dozen times. At 9 a.m., a process server would arrive at the house and hand Sarah the divorce papers. I needed to not be home when that happened. Needed to be somewhere public, somewhere with witnesses, somewhere that proved I hadn't fled or done anything suspicious. At 9:15 a.m., the police would arrive to take Sarah's statement about the financial fraud. Margaret had filed a report with evidence of the stolen money, the fraudulent credit cards, the systematic theft. They'd want to question Sarah, get her side of the story, and she'd realize just how much trouble she was in. By 10 a.m., Sarah would probably call me, angry or crying or both, demanding to know what I'd done, how I could do this to her, how I could abandon her while she was pregnant with my child. Except it wasn't my child, and I had DNA evidence to prove it. I got out of bed carefully, trying not to wake Sarah. She was sleeping on her side, belly round under the covers, one hand tucked under her cheek. She looked peaceful, innocent, like someone who deserved gentle mornings and loving partners and a future full of promise. The mask was so good, even I almost believed it sometimes. I showered, dressed in the clothes I'd laid out the night before. Business casual, nothing that would draw attention. I made coffee, poured it into a travel mug, wrote a note for Sarah. "Early meeting. Didn't want to wake you. Love you." The last lie. After today, I'd never tell her I loved her again. After today, I'd never have to. I checked on Emma, still sleeping, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. I stood in her doorway for a long moment, memorizing this. The last morning I'd be in this house as a husband and stepfather. The last morning before everything changed. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her sleeping form. Sorry she was caught in this. Sorry her mother had made choices that would tear her world apart. Sorry I couldn't protect her from what was coming. Then I left, closed the door quietly, walked through the house one last time, got in my car and drove away without looking back. I went to a coffee shop downtown, the same one where I'd made my first phone calls to Dr. Chen and Margaret Hollis all those weeks ago. Full circle. I ordered a large coffee and a scone. I had no intention of eating and sat by the window where I could see the street. 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes until the process server arrived at my house. My phone was on the table in front of me, volume turned up, waiting for the inevitable call from Sarah. My hands were shaking slightly. I wrapped them around the coffee cup to steady them. This was really happening. After 7 weeks of planning, of gathering evidence, of living a lie, this was the moment everything came apart. 8:52 a.m. 8 minutes. A text from Margaret. Process server is en route. Everything is ready. Stay where you are. Do not go home. Do not answer if she calls until after the police have been there. I replied, understood. 8:56 a.m.
4 minutes. I thought about Sarah waking up, getting out of bed, maybe putting on her robe and going to the kitchen to make coffee, finding my note, smiling because she thought she had me completely fooled. Maybe she'd text Marcus, tell him everything was going according to plan. Maybe she'd already started thinking about what she'd spend the child support money on. 8:59 a.m., 1 minute. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it. This was revenge, justice, self-preservation, whatever you wanted to call it. This was the moment I stopped being a victim and became something else. 9 a.m. I stared at my phone, willing it to ring, willing something to happen. But nothing did. Silence. The coffee shop was full of people on laptops having meetings, living their normal Tuesday morning lives while mine was detonating. 9:03 a.m. Still nothing. Was the process server late? Had something gone wrong? 9:07 a.m. My phone lit up. Not a call, a text from Sarah. What the bastard? How could you do this? I didn't respond. Margaret had been clear. No contact until after the police arrived. Let Sarah spiral. Let her panic. Let her feel what it was like to have your world collapse without warning. 9:15 a.m. My phone rang. Sarah. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Voicemail again. Voicemail. Then a series of texts, each one more desperate than the last. This is insane. You can't just divorce me while I'm pregnant. I don't understand. What did I do? We were fine yesterday. Is this about money? We can work it out. We can talk about it. Answer your phone. The police are here. They're saying I committed fraud. David, what did you tell them? Oh my God. Oh my God. You know about Marcus. There it was. Confession in a text message. Panic making her stupid, making her reveal what she'd spent months hiding. I screenshotted every message, sent them to Margaret. More evidence, more proof. 9:32 a.m., a call from an unknown number. I answered, wary. Hello, Mr. Morrison. A woman's voice, official. This is Detective Sarah Ramirez with the Financial Crimes Unit. I'm at your residence with your wife. She's asked me to contact you. Are you available to come home and discuss the situation? I'm at work, I said. Is my wife under arrest? Not at this time. We're investigating allegations of identity theft and financial fraud. Your wife has been very cooperative, but she's also very upset. She says there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I said quietly. Everything I reported is documented and true. My lawyer has all the evidence. I understand. We'll need to speak with you as well at some point. Can you come to the station later today? I can be there at 2 p.m. That works. Ask for me at the front desk. She paused. Mr. Morrison, I should tell you your wife is 4 months pregnant and quite distressed. Is there anyone who can come stay with her? Family? Friends? She has parents in Sacramento. I can call them. That would be good. Thank you. She hung up and I sat there staring at my phone. Sarah was distressed. Sarah was upset. Good. She should be. She should feel even a fraction of what I'd felt when I watched those videos, read those messages, discovered that my entire marriage was a calculated con. But the baby girl who wasn't mine, but who existed anyway, who was innocent in all this. What was this doing to her? I pushed the thought away. I couldn't afford sympathy now, couldn't afford to second-guess what I'd set in motion. 9:47 a.m., more texts from Sarah. They're leaving now. They took my phone as evidence. I'm using the neighbor's phone to text you. Please come home, please. We need to talk. I know you're angry, but this isn't the way to handle it. Think about Emma. Think about the baby. I'll tell you everything, the truth, all of it. Just please don't do this. Too late. It was done. The papers were served, the police were investigating, the wheels of justice were turning. There was no stopping it now, even if I wanted to. Did I want to? I looked at that last message. Think about Emma. Think about the baby. Emma was at school, blissfully unaware that her world was crumbling. The baby was in Sarah's womb, oblivious to the chaos, and I was in a coffee shop destroying their futures to protect my own. Was I the villain in this story? Or was I just refusing to be the victim? 10:15 a.m. A call from Tom, Sarah's father. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. David, it's Tom. Sarah called us in hysterics. Something about divorce papers and police. Helen and I are driving up now. I don't know what's going on, but I'm sure we can work this out. Whatever it is, whatever happened, you're family. We're family. Call me back. You're family. Except I never really was I? I was a mark, a paycheck, a means to an end. I deleted the voicemail. 11:30 a.m. Margaret called. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said, which was probably a lie. I didn't know what I was feeling. Numb, mostly detached, like I was watching this happen to someone else. The police are processing Sarah's statement. She's admitted to the affair, but claims the financial issues were misunderstandings, that you gave her permission to access the accounts, that the credit cards were joint decisions. She's trying to spin a narrative where you're the one who's being unreasonable, filing for divorce because you can't handle her past relationship. Can she get away with that? Not with the evidence we have. The DNA test alone proves she tried to pass off another man's child as yours. That's fraud, plain and simple. Plus, David Kim's forensic analysis shows a clear pattern of systematic theft. The credit cards have addresses you never authorized. She's buried, David. She just doesn't know how deep yet. What happens next? The police will likely file charges within a week. Identity theft, fraud, possibly more depending on what else they uncover. The divorce will proceed separately. Given that you're not the biological father and can prove Sarah committed fraud, you have grounds for annulment. Actually, we can argue the marriage was based on false pretenses. Annulment like it never happened. Like the last 2 years were just a bad dream I could wake up from. Except Emma was real. The baby was real. The heartbreak was real. I'll be at the police station at 2, I said to give my statement. I'll meet you there. And David, don't go home today. Don't see Sarah until we have a restraining order in place. She's desperate right now. And desperate people do unpredictable things. She wouldn't hurt me. You didn't think she'd steal $50,000 from you either, but here we are. Trust me on this. Stay away. She was right. I didn't really know Sarah at all. I'd thought I did, but the woman I'd married was a fiction. The real Sarah, the one who could look me in the eye and lie for 2 years straight. I had no idea what she was capable of. 12:43 p.m. I was still at the coffee shop, my scone still uneaten, my coffee long gone cold. People flowed around me, busy with their days, their problems, their lives, and I sat frozen, waiting for the next thing, the next call, the next piece of my old life to fall away. My phone buzzed. A text from the same unknown number that had contacted me before. The stranger. You did it. I'm proud of you. Now comes the hard part. Rebuilding. But you will rebuild. You're stronger than you think. Who are you? I typed back for the 100th time. This time he answered. Someone who lost everything to a woman like Sarah. Someone who wishes he'd had the courage to fight back the way you did. Someone who wants to make sure other men don't end up where I did. Broken, bankrupt, and alone. What happened to you? That's a story for another time. For now, focus on yourself. Finish what you started. And when it's over, when you're free,
Find a way to help someone else. Pay it forward. Break the cycle.
How do I find you? After this is done, you don't. I'll find you when you're ready. Good luck, David.
The number went dead again, and I sat there with this strange sense of connection to a man I'd never really met, would probably never see again, but who'd saved my life in a very real way. Without him, I'd still be Sarah's dupe, still be planning for a baby that wasn't mine, still be hemorrhaging money while she and Marcus laughed at how easy I was to fool.
Instead, I was sitting in a coffee shop at 1:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, waiting to give a statement to the police about my wife's crimes, preparing to watch my marriage officially end. And somewhere deep inside, underneath the numbness and the anger and the grief, I felt something that might have been relief. I was free. Or I would be soon. 3 months later, I stood in the empty house that used to be mine and Sarah's, watching movers carry out the last of my furniture. February rain drummed against the windows, the same cold, relentless rain that had been falling the day Margaret Hollis first laid out my legal options. Full circle again. The house had sold quickly. Turned out people loved craftsman bungalows in good school districts, even ones with histories of betrayal soaked into the walls. The new owners, a young couple expecting their first child, genuinely in love, from what I could tell, had no idea what had happened here. They just saw hardwood floors and a nice backyard in proximity to Emma's elementary school. I hadn't told them. What would I say? My ex-wife used to stand in that kitchen making dinner while texting her lover. I found out in that bedroom that the baby she was carrying wasn't mine. We had our last family meal at that dining table before everything collapsed. Some histories were better left buried. That's the last of it, Mr. Morrison. The head mover, a guy named Rick with arms like tree trunks, appeared in the doorway. Truck's loaded. We'll have everything at your new place by 5. Thanks, I said, handing in the final payment. Cash, because I'd learned not to trust anything that left a paper trail someone could manipulate. After they left, I walked through the empty rooms one last time. The living room where Sarah and I had watched TV, where Emma had played with her toys, where we decorated a Christmas tree just 2 months ago before everything exploded. The kitchen, where I'd made pancakes and served lies and pretended everything was fine. The bedroom, where I'd slept next to a stranger wearing my wife's face. I felt nothing. Nostalgia, no grief, no longing for what might have been. Just a distant observation. This is where I used to live. Now I don't. The numbness that had started the day I served divorce papers had never really lifted. Margaret said it was normal, that I was still processing trauma, that eventually I'd feel something again. I wasn't sure I wanted to. Feeling things was what had gotten me into this mess in the first place. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. Judge signed the final decree this morning. It's official. You're divorced. Divorced. After everything, the police investigation, the fraud charges, the DNA evidence, the custody battle over Emma that I'd ultimately lost, it came down to a simple legal document. Marriage dissolved, assets divided, future severed. I typed back, what about the criminal charges? Sarah took a plea deal. Guilty to 1 count of identity theft, 2 years probation, restitution of 52 years plus interest. She'll have a record, but no jail time. Given the pregnancy, the DA didn't want to push for incarceration. Of course not. Sarah was 7 months pregnant now, enormous and uncomfortable, and playing the victim to anyone who'd listen. Poor Sarah, abandoned by her cruel husband while carrying his child. Except it wasn't his child. But that detail got lost in the narrative somehow. The court of public opinion had been less kind to me than the actual court. Half our friends believed Sarah's version of events, that I'd overreacted to a past relationship, that I was vindictive and controlling, that I'd divorced her out of spite. Never mind the evidence, never mind the DNA test, Never mind that she had stolen $50,000 and tried to pass off another man's baby as mine. People believed what they wanted to believe, and they wanted to believe the pregnant woman over the cold, calculating husband who destroyed her at her most vulnerable. I'd stopped caring what people thought around January.
What about Marcus? I texted Margaret.
His wife divorced him when the affair came out. He's fighting Sarah for custody of the baby. Ironic, considering he was fine with Sarah trapping you, but apparently has strong feelings about being a father to his own child. I almost laughed. Almost. Marcus and Sarah, the perfect couple who'd orchestrated my destruction, were now destroying each other. She wanted child support. He wanted custody. Both of them were learning that lies had consequences, that schemes had a way of eating their creators. I felt no satisfaction in their pain, just nothing. "And Emma?" I asked, even though I knew Margaret couldn't help with this one. "Sarah has full custody." You knew that would happen. No biological relation, short marriage, no legal standing. "I'm sorry, David." Emma, 7 years old and confused about why David didn't live with them anymore, why Mommy cried all the time, why everything had changed so suddenly. Sarah had promised I could still see her, had said we'd work something out, but after the divorce was filed, she'd cut off all contact, changed her number, moved to a different house, took Emma out of her old school. I'd tried to fight for visitation, had argued that I'd acted as Emma's father for 2 years, that we had a bond, that it wasn't fair to punish the child for the mother's crimes. But the judge had been clear. No biological relation, no adoption, no legal rights. Sarah could cut me out of Emma's life completely, and there was nothing I could do about it. That was the part that hurt most. Not Sarah's betrayal. I'd processed that, accepted it, moved on. But losing Emma, the kid who'd called me to kill spiders and asked me to read bedtime stories and had just started to trust me enough to hold my hand in parking lots. That felt like punishment for a crime I didn't commit. I left the empty house, locked the door for the last time, and dropped the keys in the realtor's mailbox. Symbolic, maybe closing a chapter, moving forward. All the cliches people spouted about healing and growth and becoming stronger from trauma. I drove across town to my new apartment, a sterile 2-bedroom in a complex full of other divorced people starting over. The furniture the movers had delivered looked wrong in the space, like pieces from someone else's life that didn't quite fit. I'd get used to it, or I wouldn't. Either way, it was mine. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hello, David Morrison?" A man's voice, vaguely familiar. "Speaking. This is Doctor for Patterson's office, calling about your appointment tomorrow at 10 a.m. We just wanted to confirm you're still coming." I'd forgotten about that. The therapist, Margaret, had insisted I see, the one who specialized in psychological trauma and recovery from abusive relationships. I'd been going weekly for 6 weeks now, sitting in her comfortable office talking about trust and betrayal and how to rebuild a life from scratch. "I'll be there," I said. "Great. See you tomorrow." She hung up and I added the appointment to my calendar. Therapy, work, gym, dinner alone. The routine of my new life, empty and structured and safe. That evening, I opened the blue box for the first time in weeks. It had been packed away during the move, buried under clothes and books and things I didn't want to think about. But tonight, I needed to see it again. Needed to remember why I'd done what I'd done. The tablet was still there, still charged, somehow. I opened it and scrolled through the videos one more time. Sarah and Marcus at restaurants in his apartment planning my destruction. The messages detailing their scheme, the financial records showing the theft, evidence that had saved me, proof that I hadn't been crazy or paranoid or cruel. I'd been protecting myself from someone who'd systematically tried to ruin me. The README folder had one new file I hadn't noticed before, added recently somehow, though I'd never connected the tablet to Wi-Fi and didn't know how anyone could have updated it remotely. I opened it. Another letter. Same elegant script. David, if you're reading this, it means you made it through. The divorce is final. You're free. You're starting over. I want to tell you my story now. Not because you need to know. You've earned your freedom and don't owe me anything. But because I think it might help you understand why I did what I did.
My name is Michael Chen. Yes, Dr. Patricia Chen, who did your DNA testing, is my daughter. That's how I learned about you. How I knew where you'd be that day at the cafe. 15 years ago, I was where you were. Married to a woman I loved, raising children I thought were mine, building a life I thought was real. Her name was Victoria. We were married 12 years before I found out she'd been having an affair for 8 of them. One of our 3 children, my youngest daughter, the one I'd coached in soccer and helped with homework and loved completely, wasn't biologically mine. I found out by accident. A medical test for a genetic condition. The doctor told me privately that I couldn't be the father, that there was no genetic connection. I confronted Victoria. She admitted everything, the affair, the deception, the plan. She had married me for stability while loving someone else. Sound familiar? I tried to divorce her, tried to protect myself the way you did, but I made mistakes. I confronted her too early, gave her time to prepare. She hired lawyers better than mine. She claimed I was abusive, unstable. She turned our children against me, told them I was abandoning them because I was selfish. The courts believed her. I lost custody, lost my house, lost my savings, lost everything. And my daughter, the one who wasn't biologically mine, but who I'd raised from birth, she refused to see me, believed her mother's lies. I haven't spoken to her in 10 years. After the divorce, I was broken, bankrupt, alone. I thought about ending it more times than I can count, but I didn't. I rebuilt, slowly, painfully, but I rebuilt. And eventually, I started investigating Victoria. Found out she'd done this before. 3 times before me, actually. Each time the same pattern. Marry a stable man. Have an affair, get pregnant, secure child support, move on. She was a professional con artist, and I'd been her biggest score. That's when I decided no one else. I couldn't undo what happened to me, but I could prevent it from happening to others. I started tracking women like Victoria, like Sarah. I built networks, gathered information, learned how to spot the patterns. And when I found someone in danger, someone like you, I warned them, gave them evidence, gave them a chance to protect themselves the way I never could. You're the 12th man I've helped. All 12 have successfully protected themselves. None of them lost everything the way I did. That's why I do this. Not for revenge. Victoria's long gone, moved on to victim number 6 or 7 by now. But for justice, for protection, for making sure good men don't get destroyed by people who see them as nothing but resources to exploit. You asked me once how to find me. The truth is, you can't. I stay hidden, stay careful. What I do exists in legal gray areas, and I can't afford exposure. But I can give you this. If you ever encounter someone in your position, someone being manipulated, used, destroyed by someone they love, help them, warn them, give them the tools to protect themselves. Pay it forward. Break the cycle. Be for someone else what I was for you. That's how we win, David. Not by getting revenge on the people who hurt us, but by making sure they can't hurt anyone else. Good luck with your new life. You've earned it, Michael Chen. I read the letter 3 times, and with each reading, something inside me began to crack. The numbness, the protective shell I'd built around myself, the coldness that had let me survive these past 3 months. I thought about Michael Chen living in his own version of my nightmare 15 years ago, losing everything, contemplating suicide. And instead of giving up, instead of letting the bitterness consume him, he'd turned his pain into protection for others.
12 men, 12 people who might have ended up like him, broken, bankrupt, destroyed, but didn't, because he'd warned them, because he'd given them evidence and time and a fighting chance. I was number 12. I sat there in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes, still unpacked, and furniture that didn't feel like home. And I cried for the first time since the day I'd served divorce papers. Not for Sarah. She'd made her choices and would live with the consequences. Not even for myself, really. I cried for Emma, who'd lost a father figure through no fault of her own. For the baby girl who'd be born into chaos and custody battles. For Michael Chen and his daughter who hadn't spoken in 10 years. For all the collateral damage that came from one person's selfish choices. And when I was done crying, when the tears had stopped and my breathing had steadied, I made a decision. I was going to do what Michael Chen had asked. I was going to pay it forward. I didn't know how yet. Didn't know if I'd track down other victims the way he had or find some other way to help, but I knew I couldn't let this experience break me. Couldn't let Sarah's betrayal turn me into someone bitter and broken and unable to trust again. Michael had survived. He'd rebuilt. He'd found purpose in protecting others. I could do the same. 6 months later, I was sitting in a different cafe when I saw him. Not the same cafe where I'd received the blue box. I avoided that place now, but a new one across town. I was working on my laptop, designing a community center for a nonprofit that helped abuse survivors, when a man sat down at the table next to mine. Silver hair, winter lake eyes, expensive watch, inexpensive suit. Michael Chen. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't make eye contact, just sat there reading a newspaper like we were strangers who happened to be in the same place at the same time. But after a few minutes, he stood, walked past my table, and dropped something as he passed. A business card face down. By the time I picked it up, he was gone. The card had no name, no company, just a phone number and 7 words. When you're ready, we'll talk. Thank you. I tucked the card into my wallet next to my driver's license and the ultrasound picture of Emma I still carried, even though I'd never see her again. Someday, I'd call that number. Someday, when I was ready, I'd talk to Michael Chen about how to help others the way he'd helped me. But not today. Today, I was still healing, still rebuilding, still learning how to be David Morrison again. Not Sarah's husband, not Emma's stepfather, not a victim of fraud, just myself. It would take time. Dr. Patterson said trauma didn't heal overnight, that I needed to be patient with myself, that rebuilding trust would be a long, difficult process. But I had time. I had freedom. I had a future that was mine alone, untainted by lies and manipulation. And eventually, maybe not soon, but eventually, I'd be ready to help someone else find their way out of the darkness, to pay it forward, to break the cycle. Just like Michael Chen had done for me that rainy afternoon in October when a stranger handed me a blue box and saved my life. 2 years later, the email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Mr. Morrison, you don't know me, but I'm in trouble. My wife of 6 months has been acting strange. Money is disappearing from our accounts. I found a burner phone. I don't know what to do or who to trust. Someone gave me your name. Said you'd understand, said you could help. Please, I'm desperate. James. I stared at the message for a long time, remembering another desperate man 2 years ago who'd been saved by a stranger with a blue box. Then I picked up my phone and dialed the number Michael Chen had given me. It's David Morrison, I said when he answered. I'm ready to help. Tell me what I need to do. And just like that, the cycle continued. Breaking, healing, protecting, one man at a time.